Chapter 92. Yu Qianqiu felt a little drowsy as he smelled the aroma of the various spirit herbs in the pill room. Just as he yawned, he heard a pung sound as the lid of the pill furnace opened. A fragrant aroma assailed his nostrils. Yu Qianqiu wiped his face and woke up. He saw that Master Guan Weiwu had already collected the pills. "Master, how is it?" Yu Qianqiu walked over and asked. Guan Weiwu looked at the 20 black and white pills in his hand and frowned. He shook his head and said, "I changed the method, but it still doesn't work. This time there are actually 8 waste pills." He then removed the black waste pills in his hand. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "Master, I have a favor to ask of you." Guan Weiwu put the finished pills into his storage bag and asked, "What is it?" Yu Qianqiu ran over and picked up the 4 sets of spirit herbs on the ground. He laughed and said, "Master's every move reflects the style of a grandmaster. Disciple's heart is itching and I am very envious. I also want to try it out. Master, can you give Disciple a pill room and let Disciple try and see what it's like to concoct pills?" Guan Weiwu, who had just concocted a batch of pills, was unhappy because the results were not good. But when he heard his disciple say that he had the style of a grandmaster, he couldn't help but stroke his beard. In the entire cultivation world, who didn't know the name Pill Addict? Guan Weiwu? If he claimed to be second in alchemy skills, who would dare claim to be first? He didn't think that even his disciple, who didn't know alchemy, could see that he had the style of a grandmaster. But what he said was the truth. This disciple of his was an honest and reliable person. Guan Weiwu looked at Yu Qianqiu with more and more admiration. Yu Qianqiu carefully smiled. He didn't know that his casual words of flattery made his master feel so good. He was just flattering him out of habit. "You also want to concoct pills?" Guan Weiwu stared at the 4 sets of spirit grass in his hands. They were clearly the spirit grass needed to refine the qi-returning pill. Guan Weiwu thought to himself, "This disciple of mine really has a bit of talent in alchemy. He only took a glance at the prescription I picked up, and he actually remembered it. That's right. Master is the head elder of the alchemy pavilion. His alchemy skills are unparalleled in this world. As a disciple, with such a good opportunity to learn, how could I let it go? Even if I'm stupid, I still have to give it a try. In the future, when people find out that I'm your direct disciple, if they ask, I can at least say that I've refined pills before. I can't possibly say that my master is the head elder of the alchemy pavilion, and that I haven't even touched a furnace before. Master, do you think I'm right?" Yu Qianqiu said sincerely. "Yes." Guan Weiwu nodded. If word got out that the pill addict's direct disciple didn't know how to refine pills, it would be a joke. He would definitely lose face. Furthermore, the spirit herbs used to refine the qi-returning pill weren't very precious spirit herbs. If he tried it out, he might be able to learn something. "All right. Take these 4 sets of spirit herbs to broaden your horizons and experience the refining process of the spirit herbs in the furnace. If it's not enough, come to me for more. When I'm free, I'll teach you a few alchemy techniques." After Guan Weiwu finished speaking, he shouted towards the outside, "Yang Qian, when you're free. Once you see a furnace, you can't even walk. Who knows when you'll be free?" Yu Qianqiu smiled in his heart and said respectfully, "Thank you, Master, for fulfilling my wish." After a while, an old man hurriedly ran in and bowed. "Elder Guan, what can I do for you?" This person was the manager of the alchemy pavilion. His cultivation had reached the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. Yu Qianqiu had heard of his name before, so he immediately bowed and said, "Manager Yang." He addressed Yang Qianqiu this way to avoid conflict with the rules of Fuxian Island. According to the rules, he had to address Yang Qianqiu as Grandmaster, but in front of his master, it was naturally inconvenient to do so. In fact, when other people encountered such a situation, they would also do the same. Guan Weiwu pointed at Yu Qianqiu and said, "This is my disciple, Yu Qianqiu. Arrange an alchemy pavilion for him." "Understood, Elder Guan." Yang Qian smiled at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Come with me." Guan Weiwu also waved his hand at him and said, Go. Be more attentive." Yu Qianqiu thanked Guan Weiwu and left with Yang Qian with the spirit herbs. Outside, Yang Qian looked at Yu Qianqiu. Guan Weiwu had accepted more than 10 disciples, but in the end, some died, and some joined other masters. The reason was naturally because after Guan Weiwu excitedly accepted disciples, he did not care about them anymore. Some disciples even met their master for the first time, and did not see him a second time. This Yu Qianqiu was regarded so highly by Guan Weiwu. It was really unusual. Yang Qian hesitated for a while, then led Yu Qianqiu to an empty alchemy pavilion, and asked the latter, "Yu Qianqiu, what do you think of this place? If you don't like it, we can change to another one." Yu Qianqiu looked inside. As long as it could be used for alchemy, there was no need to care about so many things. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Grandmaster Yang, this one will do. There is no need to trouble yourself." "That's good, call me if there is anything. I still have something to do, I will leave first." Yang Qian smiled and said. Yu Qianqiu sent him out. Returning to the alchemy pavilion, he stepped on a protruding stone on the ground. There was a sound under the alchemy furnace, and a red light overflowed. The room instantly lit up, and the temperature gradually rose. The earth fire burned the alchemy furnace. Yu Qianqiu took out a portion of the spirit herbs, and threw the remaining 3 portions into his storage bag. After the alchemy furnace finished preheating, he opened the lid, and threw the spirit herbs inside, then quickly closed it. His divine sense guided the airflow, and quickly refined the spirit herbs. With this test, Yu Qianqiu was pleasantly surprised to find that his divine sense's control over the airflow was 1,000 times easier. Compared to refining foundation building pills, he had to use spirit stones to restore his divine sense. No wonder it was said that alchemy was only suitable after the foundation building stage. The difference was simply too big. Different alchemy furnaces had differences in alchemy, and it had little to do with whether he was used to it or not. This alchemy furnace was obviously much worse than the one Ma Zhugu used. The heat inside was not evenly distributed, and it was very easy for it to suddenly go berserk. Fortunately, he had honed it in pain, so he was very skilled in using his divine sense to control the airflow. No matter how violent the airflow was, or how difficult it was to control, his divine sense would guide, block, or draw a small circle, and it would effortlessly tame the hot airflow. Whatever he wanted it to do, it would obediently listen. This was the first time Yu Qianqiu enjoyed the feeling of controlling the air to his heart's content. That kind of smooth and comfortable feeling was too refreshing, and he was proud of himself. "Little guy, you want to fight with me?" According to the method of refining the qi-returning pill in his mind, the several spirit herb essences separated or combined, smoothly circulating inside the alchemy furnace, drawing beautiful arcs. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, sometimes it was dancing inside the furnace, and sometimes it was separated and combined. The beauty of this movement and stillness made even Yu Qianqiu himself intoxicated. Inside the furnace, there was a light blue crystal clear, and the largest spirit herb essence slowly floated in the center. Around it, there were several crystal clear balls of other colors circling around it. A gust of air blew past, and the crystal clear balls became bigger and bigger. Yu Qianqiu's divine sense moved combine. The flying crystal clear balls suddenly became like meteorites hitting the earth, and one by one, they collided with the crystal blue ball in the center. In an instant, there was only a ball of crystal clear balls of multicolored light left inside the furnace. Yu Qianqiu's divine sense moved again, separate. Under the control of the airflow, the multicolored crystal in the center of the furnace threw out drops of water, like a spinning umbrella. As a result, it disappeared without a trace, but it formed 20 much smaller, multicolored crystal clear balls in the furnace. Under the control of the airflow, they rotated in the center in an orderly manner, receiving the baptism of the highest temperature in the furnace. Yu Qianqiu let out a sigh of relief. This was the first time he used his divine sense to control more than 20 crystals at the same time. However, after his cultivation reached the foundation establishment stage, it was obvious that he had been worried for nothing. Checking the movement inside the furnace, he felt that there shouldn't be any more problems. Chapter 93. After a long time, the spiritual herb essence that had been divided into more than 20 balls shrunk into white pills the size of quail eggs. Done. Yu Qianqiu slapped open the lid of the furnace, and the pills inside were quickly ejected by the hot air. Yu Qianqiu quickly bounced up and opened up his shirt to grab all the pills. He didn't have a cultivation like Guan Weiwu, who could suck them all out with a wave of his hand. After landing, Yu Qianqiu counted carefully. There were 20 pills, not one less, and there were no black pills like the ones his master had refined. However, the color seemed different from the ones his master had refined. He picked one up and took a closer look. It was fragrant, sparkling white, smooth and glossy. There was a layer of white light on it, and it seemed to look better than the ones his master had refined. That wasn't right. With his beginner's skills, how could he refine it better than his master? Could it be that it looked good, but the medicinal effects were much worse? Yu Qianqiu suddenly thought of the foundation establishment pills he had refined. Chen Feng had used 2 to successfully build his foundation, and Guan Yu had used 7. Guan Yu had also used 3 on supporting Immortal Island, so that was 10 in total. Yu Qianqiu was even more exaggerated, using 12. Could it be that this had nothing to do with the medicinal effects? No way. He had to take it to his master. Maybe his master would know what the problem was. Yu Qianqiu lifted the hem of his shirt and walked to the largest pill room in the center, puzzled. When he entered, Guan Weiwu was holding the pills in his hand, shaking his head and sighing. Clearly, he had refined another batch of pills that didn't go his way. Master, Yu Qianqiu called out. Guan Weiwu didn't even raise his head and said, "Are there not enough spiritual herbs? Go and get them yourself." No, master. I refined a batch of qi recovery pills. I don't know how it turned out, so I brought it here for you to take a look. Yu Qianqiu said embarrassedly. Guan Weiwu raised his head in surprise and said, "You refined a batch of qi recovery pills? So fast. Let me have a look." He didn't believe it. He didn't know anything. How could he concoct pills for the first time? Yu Qianqiu lifted the hem of his robe and spread it out. There were 20 pearls lying quietly in his robe, waiting for someone to pick them. Guan Weiwu first glanced at it. With his experience, he could naturally tell the quality of the pill at a glance. Then he widened his eyes in disbelief. Damn it! Sure enough, there was a problem with my refinement. But it shouldn't have shocked you to this extent. If you have something to say, just say it. I will humbly accept it. Yu Qianqiu smiled unnaturally and said, Master, what's the problem? This disciple is puzzled and hopes that Master can correct me. Guan Weiwu's hands trembled as he reached out and pinched one out. He looked at it over and over again, then placed it in front of his nose and sniffed it. Finally, he said with a serious expression, Did you really make this yourself? I used a few sets of spirit herbs to refine it. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Damn it. Don't tell me you're afraid that I'll waste more spirit herbs. If I say I used one set, you might ask me to bring back the extra. Damn it. Don't be too stingy as a master. I'm even more stingy than you. How can it be so easy to take back something that's in my hands? Yu Qianqiu said with a little embarrassment. Look at what you're saying. Naturally, this disciple made it myself. This disciple can fool anyone. But I wouldn't dare to fool Master. That used 4 sets of spirit herbs to barely make one furnace. Hearing that he used 4 sets, Guan Weiwu revealed an expression as if he had expected it. He grabbed all the qi-returning pills that Yu Qianqiu had refined and put them into his own storage bag. He turned to the corner and picked out a few more sets of spirit herbs for refining qi-returning pills. He said to Yu Qianqiu, Let's go. Bring me to the place where you were refining pills. Seeing that his master was not going to pursue the matter of using too many spirit herbs, but was going to personally instruct him, Guan Weiwu nodded excitedly and led the way. As soon as the 2 of them walked out, they immediately attracted a lot of attention. Those who passed by saluted and said, Elder Guan. Guan Weiwu's mind was preoccupied with other things, so he didn't pay attention to anyone. He only knew how to follow his disciple. Yang Qian, who was in the middle of directing people, saw this. He didn't know what was going on. Could it be that there was a problem with the place that he had arranged for Yu Qianqiu? He hurriedly followed to check. Yu Qianqiu pointed to the alchemy room and said, Master, this is the room. Guan Weiwu nodded and said, Let's go in and have a look. Yang Qian, who followed, thought that there really was a problem with the alchemy room. But there shouldn't be a problem. It had been used for thousands of years, and no one had ever said that there was a problem. How could there be a problem when Elder Guan's disciple came? Thinking about Guan Weiwu's domineering attitude when it came to alchemy, if anyone dared to make a mistake in alchemy, they would definitely be killed by him. Otherwise, how could he have the title of pill addict? Yang Qian's heart tightened. Please don't let anything bad happen. He hurriedly followed. When Yu Qianqiu went out, the earth fire under the furnace was not turned off. When he came in, it was still the same. Guan Weiwu circled the furnace twice and carefully looked at it. He didn't see anything wrong with it, although it wasn't as good as his own furnace. He pointed to the furnace and asked, "Did you use this furnace to refine?" "Yes, master." Yu Qianqiu nodded. Yang Qian, who had followed him in, also looked at it carefully. He didn't see anything wrong. Guan Weiwu carried a pile of spiritual herbs and handed a portion to Yu Qianqiu, saying, "Refine it again according to the method just now. Put your heart into it." Yu Qianqiu was delighted. Master really wanted to personally guide him in alchemy. He hurriedly said, "Yes." He skillfully threw in the spiritual herbs, closed the furnace lid, and threw himself into the process of refining the qi returning pill. Seeing that his disciple had already entered the state of alchemy, Guan Weiwu wanted to insert his divine sense into the furnace to see how his disciple was refining. But he was afraid of disturbing his disciple, so he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Putting away the spiritual herbs, he took out the qi returning pill that Yu Qianqiu had just refined and examined it in his hand. Yang Qian found it strange. What were these master and disciple doing? He walked over to Guan Weiwu, wanting to ask what was going on, only to see Guan Weiwu anxiously waving his hand at him, gesturing for him to be quiet. Yang Qian was so frightened that he stood there with him, not daring to move. Yu Qianqiu had the experience of refining the qi returning pill from the previous furnace. This time, he was even more at ease with his control. He was performing a wonderful game of divine sense control inside the furnace. Unfortunately, there was no one else to see it. After a long time, Yu Qianqiu finally opened his eyes. Just as he waved his hand to open the furnace lid, he heard Guan Weiwu shout, "Come." He raised his hand and sucked in the medicinal pills that had been ejected. He compared the pile of pills he had sucked in with the original one in his hand. After looking at it, he found that it really was the same method of refining the same medicinal pills. Moreover, there were no less than 20 pills, not a single one was a waste. Yu Qianqiu stopped, walked over and asked, "Master, is there a problem?" Guan Weiwu snorted and shook his head. He stuffed all the medicinal pills in his hand into his storage bag and shouted to Yu Qianqiu and Yang Qian, "You two are not allowed to disturb me while I'm refining pills." Seeing how serious he was, the two of them nodded repeatedly. Guan Weiwu rolled up his sleeves, took out some spiritual herbs, and directly threw them into the furnace to begin refining. Yu Qianqiu knew that this refining would take a lot of time. He stood to the side and quietly recovered his yuan qi and slightly damaged divine sense. He then refined 2 furnaces of pills, more or less exhausted. But compared to when he was refining the building foundation pills, he did not know how many times better. Yang Qian, who was standing to the side, was shocked. He had seen the furnace of qi returning pills that Yu Qianqiu had refined. That shape, that luster, and that indistinct pill halo. He had stayed in the alchemy pavilion for nearly 100 years, so he could naturally distinguish good pills from bad ones. There were no less than 20 pills. Not a single one was a waste pill. And there was even a pill halo that only top-grade medicinal pills had. Heavens! It was actually refined by Guan Weiwu's disciple. How is this possible? Even Guan Weiwu did not have this level. Chapter 94. Although it was just an ordinary qi replenishing pill, Yang Qian knew what it represented. There were many Foundation Establishment stage disciples on the supporting Immortal Island, so they needed a lot of qi returning pills. The 10,000 Fragrance Garden often didn't have enough qi returning pills and spirit herbs. Furthermore, in order to appease the quarrels between the other sects, the sect had to sell a considerable amount of qi returning pills every year. However, the proportion of waste pills was too high. More than half of the pills in a furnace were waste pills. Only an expert alchemist like Guan Weiwu could control the proportion to less than half. If he could refine a full furnace of pills like Yu Qianchou's, and it was a top-grade pill with pill halo, he could sell it for at least double the price. The benefits to the sect would be unimaginable. Yang Qian finally understood why Guan Weiwu had been so reckless just now. Pung! The lid of the cauldron popped up, and Guan Weiwu opened his 5 claws, sucking all the medicinal pills into his palm. Yu Qianchou and Yang Qian walked over to watch. In his wide palm, 7 out of the 20 pills were useless. Yu Qianchou and Yang Qian glanced at each other. Guan Weiwu suddenly raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl, causing all the busy people in the alchemy room to look in his direction. It was hard to tell if he was happy or sad. The 20 pills in his hand, regardless of whether they were good or bad, were all crushed into powder and thrown to the side. Yang Qian understood Guan Weiwu's current mood. He had been refining pills for his entire life, yet he could not compare to his disciple, who had just entered the sect. Yu Qianchou, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. He didn't know what was wrong with his master. Wasn't it just a few wasted pills? Is it worth blaming yourself like this? You see, I didn't even refine a single batch of pills, but you're still very calm. Sigh. This master was really an alchemy fanatic. Rotten wood that could not be carved. Guan Weiwu grabbed Yu Qianchou's arm and shouted, "Come with me." Finished speaking, he dragged Yu Qianchou and ran. F***ck me. You pinched me so hard it hurts. Yu Qianchou grimaced in pain as he ran after her. Yang Qian followed suit. The 3 of them jogged all the way to Guan Weiwu's personal alchemy room. After entering, Guan Weiwu released Yu Qianchou's arm and said, "Yu Qianchou, refine another furnace according to the previous method. I want to infuse my divine sense into the furnace to see how you refine. You don't need to worry about my divine sense, I won't disturb you. You just focus on refining your pills, do you understand?" Yu Qianchou rubbed his sore arm. He was also touched by his master's attentive guidance. He thought to himself, how can I, Yu Qianchou, be able to meet 2 masters who treat me like this? Sigh. He was so moved that tears flowed down his face. He would never forget this kindness in his life. Taking the spirit grass from Guan Weiwu, he nodded and said, "Master, I understand." Then he put in the spirit grass and began to refine again. Tsk. The furnace of the alchemy pavilion's principal elder was different. The heat was uniform and strong. It was better than Ma Jugu's furnace. Yu Qianchou sighed in his heart. Then he noticed that there were 2 more strands of divine sense inside the furnace. One was his master's and the other one? Needless to say, there were only 3 people in the alchemy room. The remaining one was definitely Yang Qian's. Guan Weiwu also noticed the extra divine sense and glared at Yang Qian. The latter smiled awkwardly and pursed his lips at the pill furnace. The 2 of them closed their eyes and focused on the situation inside the pill furnace. When the 2 of them looked, they were shocked. They discovered that Yu Qianchou wasn't using his divine sense to directly refine the spirit grass essence. Instead, he was controlling the heat flow inside the furnace to control the spirit grass essence. The 2 of them had been refining pills for many years, but they had never seen someone refine pills like this. Since ancient times, who in the cultivation world didn't use their divine sense to refine pills? The only exception was those ordinary people who claimed to be able to refine pills. In reality, what they refined was just some ointment. After taking it out and rolling it into a ball, they dried it and used it as a pill. This was completely different from refining pills. Even if they used real materials to refine pills, 90% of the world's essence would be gone. Yu Qianchou's method was unheard of and unseen, but it was a breath of fresh air. They didn't know that Yu Qianchou had already begun to learn alchemy when he was still in the qi refining stage. Based on his cultivation at that time, his divine sense couldn't directly control anything inside the furnace, forcing him to come up with a method to use his divine sense to stir the airflow. Although he finally succeeded in learning it, the suffering and pain he suffered during the process was something that Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian couldn't understand. They also didn't know that Yu Qianchou was stupid enough to forcibly use his divine sense to refine pills before he reached the foundation building stage. Of course, there were objective reasons for him to do so. First, he was eager to obtain the foundation building pill. Second, he listened to Yen Zixia's words. She said that Ma Jugu said that very few people could refine pills while in the qi refining stage. Since it was very few, it meant that there was. And since there was, it meant that he could also do it. In the end, relying on a large number of spirit stones, he really did it. Third, he didn't know that the so-called few people were gifted, and their cultivation was comparable to that of the foundation building stage, when they were in the qi refining stage. Fourth, he didn't know that forcibly refining like that would accidentally destroy his divine sense and turn him into an idiot. If he had known this, he would probably rather be killed than bear the result of turning into an idiot. Fifth, and also more or less related to the third reason, although he wasn't gifted, when he was in Onquangsung, because of the help of the golden bead, he could inflate his dantian for a very long time, which allowed him to have a larger capacity of true qi than people at the same cultivation level as him. As a result, his cultivation at the late qi refining stage was indeed much stronger than that of ordinary people. Naturally, his divine sense was also much stronger, which to a large extent prevented him from turning into an idiot. In fact, with Yu Qianqiu's current cultivation level, he could also use the method of controlling objects with his divine sense to directly refine pills. However, he found that using the method of controlling the flow of air to refine pills was more effortless. With the help of the hot air in the furnace, it was like using 4 ounces to move 1,000 caddies, which was very effortless. Moreover, when refining pills, according to the inertia of the flow of air, the essence of the spiritual herbs would be divided and combined. Even if there were many pills, it would still be guaranteed that the medicinal properties of each pill would be evenly distributed. This was something that couldn't be achieved by using the method of controlling objects with his divine sense to forcibly separate them. That way, the medicinal properties contained in each pill would always be more or less different. It would definitely not be as uniform as the method Yu Qianqiu was using now, when the essence of the spiritual herbs in the furnace was manipulated by the flow of air by Yu Qianqiu's divine sense. It made a variety of smooth performances. All kinds of brilliant spiritual liquids danced in the furnace, drawing out a dazzling brilliance that shook people's hearts. The arcs drawn out were colorful, and the convergence was enchanting. Sometimes it was dripping, sometimes it gathered and scattered, sometimes it bloomed like a flower, and sometimes it spun and embraced. Under the simple manipulation of the flow of air by his divine sense, the spiritual liquids in the furnace slowly evolved towards their ultimate goal. Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian's divine sense inside the furnace fluctuated in disbelief at first, but soon after, they quietly enjoyed this visual feast. The faces of their bodies outside the furnace revealed intoxicated expressions. Even when the pills were completed, the two were still intoxicated. Peng! The furnace lid opened, and Yu Qianqiu used a method that was many times more clumsy than Guan Weiwu's. He jumped up and used the old method of using the hem of his long robe to cover the pills. The sound of the furnace lid opening also startled the two. The two opened their eyes and slowly exhaled a stuffy breath that they had no choice but to exhale. Yu Qianqiu lifted the hem of his robe and walked over. Scratching his head, he said, "Master, is there a big problem with the pills I've refined like this?" Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian looked at each other, shaking their heads and smiling bitterly. "AI!" Guan Weiwu sighed. Looking at the 20 completed pills in front of him, he reached out and picked up an energy recovery pill from his disciple's robe. His eyes blurred as he looked at the mesmerizing halo that the pill was emitting. Suddenly, he directly threw it into his mouth and swallowed it. What he had refined and what his disciple had refined were both energy recovery pills. However, after circulating his energy, the efficacy of the latter was nearly double that of the former. Chapter 95. Yang Qian walked over, picked up an energy recovery pill, and did the same thing. The two of them stood in silence for a long time. Ashamed, Guan Weiwu, who had been standing silently, suddenly shook his head. Yang Qian sighed. "The light from the furnace is dancing, But I hope I don't wake up. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them, his expression a little gloomy. The pills I refined made one of you feel ashamed, and the other hope you don't wake up? I've never seen such sarcasm before. I refined my own foundation-building pills, but didn't I still succeed in building my foundation? Although I ate a little too much, damn it. What the hell are these two old bastards doing? Yu Qianqiu, who taught you this alchemy method? Guan Weiwu stared at him with a deep gaze. Yang Qian also stared at him. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. He really couldn't think of anyone to shift the blame to, so he could only answer honestly. Disciple is ignorant. Disciple has never learned alchemy properly, so I could only try to refine it randomly. In the end, I refined it like this. Guan Weiwu raised an eyebrow, asking, "Is it really a method you figured out yourself?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. Disciple doesn't dare to lie to master. It's really a method I figured out randomly. Guan Weiwu glanced at Yang Qian, then shook his head and laughed bitterly. To think that I boasted that my alchemy skills were unparalleled in the cultivation world, and even felt proud because people called me alchemy addict. Who would have thought that I was as short-sighted as a frog at the bottom of a well? I can't even compare to a disciple who has just started alchemy. How shameful. Ah, was that disciple talking about me? Was it me? Yu Qianqiu asked himself again and again. No matter how stupid he was, he could still hear some clues from Guan Weiwu's words. It turned out that contrary to his initial guess, it wasn't that he didn't refine it well, but that he refined it very well. Calm down, I must calm down. Yu Qianqiu suppressed his increasingly excited emotions. Guan Weiwu closed his eyes and pondered for a while, then took out a spiritual herb and threw it into the furnace to refine. Yang Qian knew that he had just seen Yu Qianqiu's alchemy method, so he was probably testing it now. Yu Qianqiu obediently stood to the side and didn't say anything. Although he was very good at acting obediently after getting a bargain, it really wasn't convenient for him to be too frivolous at this time. He could only silently praise the pill recipe jade disc left behind by the pill ancestor. Pung! The lid of the furnace popped up, and the qi-returning pill was absorbed into Guan Weiwu's hand as soon as it came out of the furnace. Yang Qian was the first to step forward to take a look, and Yu Qianqiu also followed. 20 white pills were still warm as they lay in Guan Weiwu's hand. The 20 pills were completely white, and not a single one was useless. Unfortunately, there was still a slight difference in quality between them and the pills that Yu Qianqiu had refined. When Guan Weiwu was refining, he wanted to learn from Yu Qianqiu and use his divine sense to control the airflow. Although he could also control it, he lacked his disciple's freedom. No matter how hard he tried, it was like he had seen a ghost. If he used too much strength, it would run faster than a rabbit, and if he used too little strength, it would turn a corner. He was not like Yu Qianqiu, whose spiritual sense would occasionally point to the east and occasionally point to the west. When he had nothing to do, he would draw a circle to the left and a circle to the right. Guan Weiwu was almost angered to death by the airflow. He couldn't tame it, and in the end, he became a cat instead of a tiger. He also accepted his fate, and in the end, he used his divine sense to forcibly control things to refine. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu had already seen the alchemy steps clearly. With his many years of alchemy experience, he naturally mastered it effortlessly. And just like that, the alchemy was completed. Elder Guan, it's a success. Although it wasn't as good as Yu Qianqiu's, Yang Qian still couldn't help but shout excitedly, because this was too important for supporting Xian Island. As long as the alchemy method of qi recovery pill was correct, it could be recommended for use in the entire alchemy pavilion. After all, not everyone could refine the highest grade alchemy pills like Yu Qianqiu's. Guan Weiwu was a ready-made example, but it was enough. Guan Weiwu nodded solemnly and sighed. What a pity. It's just the shape, but not the spirit. After saying that, he stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes. Yang Qian also did the same. Damn it. I really didn't do it on purpose. Now even Master's limelight has been overshadowed. Yu Qianqiu subconsciously shrank back. Guan Weiwu took a deep breath, turned his head and said, Yang Qian, ask the sect leader and Elder Shangshan and Elder Puna to come quickly. Yes. Yang Qian bowed and quickly flew out of the alchemy room. When the disciples outside saw the steward flying in the cave in a hurry, they looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Shangshan, Pune Evil, Journey of Heroes, Labakanji, Island of Heroes, supporting Xian Island? There didn't seem to be any relationship between the two islands, right? Yu Qianqiu looked at Master and really wanted to ask if there was Labakanji on the island. Not long after, Guan Weiwu suddenly listened and nodded. He's here, Yu Qianqiu, go out and welcome the sect leader. When the two of them left the alchemy room, they saw the sect leader Feng Xiangtian leading a group of people in big strides. The surrounding disciples kept bowing and said, "Sect leader, elder." It wasn't just 1 or 2 elders, there were more than 10 of them. They hadn't seen something like this in the Alchemy Pavilion's underground alchemy room for many years. Guan Weiwu frowned and shouted, "Unrelated disciples, go do what you need to do. This has nothing to do with you." His voice reverberated throughout the underground space, and the disciples who came to bow dispersed. Feng Xiangtian, who was dressed in a bright robe, stood out like a crane among chickens. He laughed from afar and said, "Weiwu, is the good news that Yang Qian told me true? I've brought all the elders here to verify it. You mustn't disappoint us." Yu Qianqiu realized that his archenemy, Yin Shu, was also here. He was leading the way with Yang Qian in front of the sect leader and the others. When they came closer, the master and disciple were about to bow when Feng Xiangtian grabbed Guan Weiwu's wrist and said, "No need to be so polite." Then he looked around and said, "There are too many people here. Let's talk inside your alchemy room." Once everyone entered, an elder placed a layer of light curtain at the door of the alchemy room, immediately blocking all the sounds outside. Naturally, the sounds inside could not be heard outside. Fortunately, Guan Weiwu's alchemy room was big enough that it was not crowded when everyone stood in it. Feng Xiangtian said to Guan Weiwu solemnly, "I heard from Yang Qian that your disciple, Yu Qianqiu, solved the problem of the energy recovery pill. Is it true?" Guan Weiwu looked at everyone inside. "Sect leader senior brother, it is true." "Good, good, good." Feng Xiangtian hammered his palms with his fists and said good 3 times. He pointed at Guan Weiwu and said, "Junior brother, your alchemy pavilion has made a great contribution to supporting Xian Island." Then he turned around and waved at the elders. "As long as my supporting Immortal Island has enough energy recovery pills, no matter what happens in the cultivation world, my supporting Immortal Island will have the upper hand." Feng Xiangtian's domineering aura of a superior was revealed as he talked. All the elders nodded. Everyone knew that although supporting Xian Island was isolated in the sea and would not take the initiative to cause any trouble, there was always an unpredictable storm in the sky. Who could guarantee that nothing would happen to supporting Xian Island? It was probably not only the demonic path that wanted to challenge the #1 sect in the cultivation world. Once a war broke out, supporting Xian Island would have enough energy recovery pills to maintain a strong fighting strength. With their tireless elites, it would be hard for them to continue fighting the enemy. Where is Yu Qianqiu? Feng Xiangtian just realized that Yu Qianqiu, who was just in front of him, was nowhere to be seen. Everyone turned around to look for him. "Disciple is here." Everyone looked towards the place where the voice came from. At the corner at the back, a hand was raised, but the person was nowhere to be seen. All the elders opened up a path. "Damn it! You bunch of old fellows are here. How can I stand in front of you?" Yu Qianqiu gave everyone a simple and honest smile and jogged to the front of the sect master. Chapter 96. Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu with a faint smile. Speaking of which, he didn't know most of the young disciples of Fuxian Island, but this ordinary-looking Yu Qianqiu in front of him was the 3rd time he met him. The first 2 times he met him had given him a headache, but this time, he gave him a big surprise. Seeing the long sword on Yu Qianqiu's back, Feng Xiangtian frowned, as if he remembered something. He looked at Guan Weiwu and asked, "Didn't Yu Qianqiu not have a foundation-building pill? How did he succeed in building his foundation?" Most of the elders didn't know about this, but when they heard the sect master's words, they all showed questioning looks. Guan Weiwu smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know what kind of dog shit luck this kid has. After staying in the mulberry grassland for a few days, he actually got Jugu's favor and personally helped him to build his foundation. As soon as he said this, everyone's doubts were immediately resolved. No one doubted Ma Jugu's ability, but they were curious about how Yu Qianqiu could get Ma Jugu's favor. After a careful examination, they found that they couldn't see through his cultivation, so Ma Jugu probably fancied his talented physique. Feng Xiangtian nodded and said, "So that's how it is." Then he changed the topic and waved his hand. "Okay, let's not talk about this. Weiwu, everyone is not here to chat. Take out what everyone wants to see." Guan Weiwu nodded and took out a set of spiritual herbs from his storage bag, handing it to Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "Refining this qi-returning pill. This master of mine is not as good as you, so don't embarrass yourself by taking it out. You can refine one furnace." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even Guan Weiwu felt inferior. How was this possible? They all looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. The latter sighed inwardly. "Master, are you trying to support me or ruin me? Don't you know that a tall tree attracts the wind? Is it so easy to be in the limelight? Words spoken are like spilled water. There is no way to take them back." Yu Qianqiu could only silently accept the order. The preheating of the alchemy furnace was ready-made. He placed the spiritual herbs into the lid of the furnace and began to refine the alchemy pills. As soon as his divine sense entered the alchemy furnace to control it, he was startled. The spirit herbs swayed and almost fell to the boiling red bottom of the furnace and were destroyed. There were more than a dozen strands of divine sense around the furnace walls. Needless to say, only those old bastards in the alchemy room would dare to do this without even telling him. Feng Xiangtian's divine sense was also inside. He turned his head to look at the people around him and frowned slightly. He transmitted his voice to Yu Qianqiu. "Yu Qianqiu, don't worry about them. Focus on refining your elixir." However, he didn't think that he was doing the same thing as the others. This was probably the shamelessness of those in power. "Sigh, I wanted to be sneaky, but there were too many eyes." Yu Qianqiu nodded. He couldn't be bothered to care so much. He would just treat it as dog poop. Out of sight, out of mind, a bunch of old bastards. A wonderful performance began inside the furnace. The expressions on everyone's faces were surprise, disbelief, as if they were dreaming, intoxicated and so on. Yen Shu, who was standing with Yang Qian, had a look of jealousy and hatred on his face. The two of them weren't qualified to participate in this grand event with the elders. After a pung sound, the elixir was formed. Everyone's gaze fell on the energy recovery elixir in Guan Weiwu's hand. Although it wasn't the first time Guan Weiwu had seen the elixir refined by Yu Qianqiu, he still couldn't help but reveal a stunned expression when he saw it again. He sighed with every step he took to the sect leader. Feng Xiangtian picked up one and looked at the faint white light on the energy recovery elixir. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Elixir dizziness." His face was full of disbelief. Everyone came over and took one from Guan Weiwu's hand to take a look. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few elixirs left in Guan Weiwu's hand. For a moment, exclamations rang out in the pill room. After Feng Xiangtian appraised the energy recovery elixir in his hand, he swallowed it in one gulp. After a while, he exhaled and praised, "I'm afraid even the famous pill sect thousands of years ago rarely refined such a high-grade elixir." The other elders also followed suit, swallowing the energy-returning pills in their hands to fill their stomachs. Yu Qianqiu felt a toothache when he saw this. They were really freeloading, but after eating, they finally left behind a wave of praises. "Mighty, can this alchemy method be promoted in the alchemy pavilion?" Feng Xiangtian was indeed the sect leader, who controlled the world's #1 sect. He was indeed outstanding in his own way. He could see the pros and cons of Yu Qianqiu's refining method with just one look. Although the elders were not proficient in alchemy, they were not completely clueless. They had never seen or heard of Yu Qianqiu's alchemy method before, so they all had the same question as the sect leader. Guan Weiwu smiled bitterly and said, "Speaking of which, it's also heaven's will. I saw that my disciple was bored, so I gave him a few sets of spiritual herbs and let him ponder on it himself. He had never refined a pill before, but who knew that by chance, he would actually come up with this unprecedented alchemy method. I've also tried using this method before. Maybe it's because my talent is poor, but I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to imitate it in a short period of time. However, this alchemy method can be promoted in the alchemy pavilion. I've already tried it, and there have never been any cases of pills being wasted. It's just that I can't refine such a high-grade elixir. The crowd was instantly in an uproar. It was Yu Qianqiu's first time refining a pill, and even the pill addict Guan Weiwu had to admit that he was inferior to him. Furthermore, he even created an unprecedented alchemy method. If this wasn't talent, then what was? For a moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu, which made the latter feel very embarrassed. Feng Xiangtian said with slight regret, "This is already very good. Weiwu, you should arrange this matter as soon as possible." His gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu, and he asked again, "What is your disciple doing in the alchemy pavilion now?" "Currently, he's in charge of fetching spiritual herbs from the myriad fragrance garden and the alchemy pavilion," Guan Weiwu replied. Feng Xiangtian was just asking casually, and he didn't expect to hear such a reply. He couldn't help but frown, and his tone was a little unhappy. Since he has such talent, isn't it a bit of a waste to do such a thing? Could it be that the alchemy pavilion can't find a second disciple who can fetch spiritual herbs? Mighty Ah, it's not that I want to criticize you, but it's a good thing for you and supporting Immortal Island to have such a talented disciple by your side to inherit your legacy. Before Guan Weiwu could speak, Ferdinand, who was standing in the crowd, stood out and said anxiously, "Sect Master, Yu Qianqiu is the person whom Elder Guan and I decided on together to fetch spiritual herbs. Moreover, we just decided on him not long ago, and he hasn't been there even once. How can he be changed so soon? His daughter was his flesh and blood." The words he said in a moment of panic were full of loopholes, and the reason was too far-fetched. All the elders looked at him, as if they were looking at a monster. Feng Xiangtian looked at him from head to toe, and he said strangely, "Elder Fei, the alchemy pavilion is assigning a disciple. Why are you so anxious? Could it be that changing someone to fetch spiritual herbs from your myriad fragrance garden will reduce your production of spiritual herbs? Or is there any other reason? Give me a reason that can convince me." Ferdinand's face twitched. He did say something wrong because of his daughter's anxiousness. Even if he didn't say anything wrong, how could he say the real reason? He could only change his words and said, "I'm just saying, I don't mean anything else." After saying that, he retreated. Feng Xiangtian glared at him and didn't say anything, but there was a doubt in his heart. Guan Weiwu was reprimanded by the sect master. But not only was he not angry after hearing Ferdinand's words, he was secretly happy. When Ferdinand found him that day, in order to fight for the position of delivering spiritual herbs for Yu Qianqiu, he even used the amount of spiritual herbs to threaten him. It was really infuriating. Now that he met someone who was harder to deal with, he lost his temper. "Yen Shu, arrange for a new disciple to deliver the spirit herbs. Yang Qian, find a room for Yu Qianqiu to use alone." Guan Weiwu quickly implemented the sect master's suggestion. At this time, Feng Xiangtian glanced at everyone and said, "This matter is of great importance. Today's matter must not be leaked to the outside world. Otherwise, you will be severely punished, no matter who you are. In addition, my Fuxian Island has always been clear about rewards and punishments for the disciples. Meritorious service will be rewarded, and mistakes will be punished. Yu Qianqiu has made a great contribution, so he should be rewarded. Elder Hai, you are in charge of rewards and punishments. What should we reward?" Chapter 97. After Yen Shu led the sect leader and the others away, Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian quickly summoned the nascent soul stage cultivators of the alchemy pavilion to plan on refining the qi recovery pill. As for those below the nascent soul stage, they were not included. Yu Qianqiu did not want to join in the fun anymore. His storage bag contained the 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones that Elder Hai had awarded to him in front of everyone. He went to the pill room for his own use with a happy mood. When he received the 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones that were flashing with amber light, the elder's eyes turned green. It was indeed a lot of money. He had spent more than 2,000 upper-grade spirit stones to learn alchemy some time ago. He had earned back a lot in such a short time. Touching the thick pill furnace, Yu Qianqiu was filled with emotion. No wonder in his previous life, it was said that with a skill, one could travel the world. It seemed that this saying was also very useful in the cultivation world. It was worth pondering over. Not long after, Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian came together. Without saying anything, Guan Weiwu took out a jade plate and handed it to Yu Qianqiu and said, "There are 3 pill recipes inside. You can use them for the trial. If you need any spirit herbs, just ask Yang Qian." Yang Qian nodded in agreement. Yu Qianqiu laughed and agreed. After sending his master and Yang Qian away, he took the jade plate in his hand and checked it. He sneered disdainfully and threw it into his storage bag. The 3 flavors were pill recipes to increase vitality and cultivation. If it was not to verify the pill recipes on the jade plate, was it necessary for him to refine the qi recovery pill? Since it was proven useful, did he still want to contribute to the supporting Immortal Island? No way. I was going to create the world's #1 sect to play with. If I give you all the good stuff, what will I use in the future? If I want to contribute, I will do it for myself. I don't care about a mere 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Thinking of Ferdinand's sad eyes before he left, Yu Qianqiu felt a little guilty. He had lived with his daughter for so long. It was not right for him to leave just like that. Find some time. Find some time to see that ugly girl as much as possible. At present, the most important thing was to improve his cultivation. My sword kinesis flight. Now that he had a lot of time, it was time to focus on his cultivation. Yu Qianqiu shook his head as he looked at the busy figures in the underground alchemy room. Who were they working hard for? For whom? He absolutely could not end up like them. He swayed as he walked out of the underground space and out of the main hall. He specifically walked over to the side of the disciple, who had yet to reach foundation establishment. After picking up quite a few martial Uncle Yu, he walked down the mountain. Standing next to the alchemy pavilion, Yan Shu watched the figure go down the mountain with an uncontrollable anger on his face. He remembered what his father told him after the other elders left. That's right, Yu Qianqiu. You can't act recklessly now. He is now in the eyes of the sect leader and the elders. At least for now, you can't act recklessly. There will always be a chance. Yan Shu took a deep breath, exhaled and walked to the side. On the way to the cultivation pavilion, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to find a mirror to look at himself in an ancient costume, with a long sword on his back. He wanted to see if he had the demeanor of a hero. Unfortunately, he did not get what he wanted. With the jade disc he obtained when he was rectifying his name, he once again passed through the protective array of the cultivation pavilion. Looking at the figure flying in the sky in front of him, Yu Qianqiu's blood boiled. He hurried to find the sutra pavilion that he had dreamed of for a long time. There were many buildings hidden among the green mountains, but which one was the sutra pavilion? He visited many of them one by one, but they were all turned away by the guards, as if they were looking at a rookie. He stopped a lot of passers-by, but they either looked at him coldly or didn't even bother to talk to him. He finally understood how heartless the cultivation world was. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth. For the great cause of cultivation, I'll endure it. He completely displayed the tireless spirit of a Yihong brothel fan. He leaned against a tree on the side of a path and looked around, unwilling to give up. Finally, an extraordinarily handsome young man walked over from the opposite direction. Yu Qianqiu pulled himself together. Damn it! I can't always put on a begging attitude. He raised his hand and said, "Junior apprentice brother, come here for a moment." The handsome young man stopped and looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was slightly startled. He carefully examined him, but couldn't see through his cultivation. He walked over and bowed. "What business does senior apprentice brother have with me? Damn it! This person is so cheap." As expected, it's still effective. Yu Qianqiu lazily got up from the tree and said expressionlessly, "Junior apprentice brother, I want to ask you something. Where is the sutra pavilion? If it's not troublesome, can you take me there?" The young man was startled. Then he laughed and shook his head. "Which branch are you from? You don't even know where the sutra pavilion is. You're clearly a newcomer, who just entered foundation building. I'm in the middle stage of core formation, yet you dare to pretend to be my senior apprentice brother. You've got guts. Yu Qianqiu didn't think that his casual words would be seen through. He silently scolded himself for being stupid. How could he make such a low-level mistake? However, he didn't think he was that easy to fool. Looking at the young man's appearance, he didn't look like he was in the middle stage of core formation. He said with a cold face, "Junior apprentice brother, what do you mean by that?" The handsome young man couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He pointed with 2 fingers, and the sword on his back shot out with a clang. It floated in the air and glared at Yu Qianqiu. The young man smiled and said, "Nothing. Since you dare to pretend to be my senior apprentice brother, then I'd like to ask senior apprentice brother for some advice. Let's see if you, a fake senior apprentice brother, can beat my junior apprentice brother." Damn, he's serious. I'm just an early-stage foundation building cultivator who doesn't know anything. Fighting a middle-stage core formation cultivator like me, isn't that courting death? Yu Qianqiu's expression instantly changed. He laughed and said respectfully, "Martial uncle's discerning eyes are like a torch. Sure enough, this little trick of mine can't fool you. Disciple was just joking. Senior, don't be angry, don't be angry." As he spoke, he carefully guarded against the 3-feet-long sword in the air that was pointed at him. The handsome young man hesitated for a moment. He stretched out 2 fingers and clenched them into a fist again. After his sword returned to its sheath, he smiled and said, "You're quite interesting. You're just asking for directions, yet you have to play so many tricks. Which branch are you from? What's your name?" After his little trick was exposed, Yu Qianqiu replied honestly, "Disciple Yu Qianqiu. I'm from the Alchemy Pavilion." The handsome young man said, "Oh, so you're a disciple from the Alchemy Pavilion. You've just reached Foundation Establishment and want to go to the Scripture Pavilion, right?" Yes, Martial Uncle is wise. You guessed it right," Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. "We're all disciples of Fuxian Island, so I won't make things difficult for you. I'll show you the way to the Scripture Pavilion. How about this? Give me a top-grade spirit stone first and I'll tell you." The handsome young man smiled and stared at his storage bag. Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. He wanted to slap himself. Not only did he fail to trick people, he was also being blackmailed. He had to give someone a top-grade spirit stone for nothing. But the situation was stronger than him. He took out an amber spirit stone unwillingly and gave it to the young man respectfully. The young man got the spirit stone and glanced at his storage bag. He looked at the spirit stone in his hand and said, "I see that you're not willing to give me the spirit stone. If this gets out, they'll say that I'm blackmailing a junior. It's not worth tarnishing my reputation for a spirit stone. How about this? Why don't you give me another top-grade spirit stone? That way it's worth my reputation. If you're not willing, I'll return this spirit stone to you, and we can fight to our heart's content. That way we'll be more comfortable. What do you think?" As he spoke, the 2 fingers on his other hand were already moving. He wanted to shoot out a sword art. The threat was very strong. Chapter 98. F***CK. Gigolo, you're too F***King evil. If I asked for it just now, then you're clearly extorting me in broad daylight. You have guts. Today, I will pay the price to avoid disaster. Yu Qianqiu calmly took out another high-quality spirit stone. He knew that it would be even more disgusting if he continued to pester him. So he quickly handed it over. "At least you know your place." The young man took the spirit stone and snorted. He pointed at a small path in the distance and said, "Kid, follow that path and you will reach the Sutra Pavilion. Remember, don't overestimate yourself next time." Disciple knows his mistake. "May I ask Martial Uncle's name, so that disciple will remember your teachings?" Yu Qianqiu was a flexible person. "What? From your tone you still remember this grudge?" The young man glanced at him coldly. He flicked his 2 fingers, and the sword was unsheathed. A cold light brushed past Yu Qianqiu's forehead. The latter was so scared that he took a step back. The young man jumped up and landed on the sword. He sneered, "If you want revenge, remember my name. I am Gu Qingyan, disciple of the Cultivation Pavilion." A gust of wind blew, and the sword flew into the distance. That fellow is interesting. There's a hint of evil in him. Gu Qingyan, I'll remember you. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and stared at the silhouette of Qin Wentian. Not only was he not angry, he actually laughed. He turned around and walked in the direction Gu Qingyan pointed. The scripture pavilion was a place guarded by the cultivation pavilion, so it was naturally not an ordinary place. It contained all kinds of ancient books that had been collected by the supporting immortal island for thousands of years. Yu Qianqiu had long heard of this place. It was known as the place with the richest collection of books in the entire cultivation world. There was a saying that as long as there were books in the Sutra Pavilion, the island would be able to stand tall in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu deeply agreed with this saying. Just like the country in his previous life, as long as the cultural heritage of the country was passed down, no external forces would be able to destroy it. Instead, the more hardships it went through, the more it would shine in the world. Even if a country fell apart or declined, there would always be people who could carry on the legacy and rebuild the old country. This was the unique charm of cultural heritage, the charm of being able to last for a long time. Yu Qianqiu had once deeply loved that piece of land. Even though she had her faults, he still loved it without any regrets. That love was deeply engraved in his soul. Even if he reincarnated into this life, he would never forget it. In the basin surrounded by mountains, there was a building that occupied an immeasurable area. It was almost 200 feet tall and exuded a simple and unadorned charm. It stood there quietly, narrating the vicissitudes of life it had experienced. Walking to the main entrance of the building, Xiaochun raised his head and saw a huge stone plaque hanging at a height of more than 10 meters. On it were the words Sutra Pavilion in gold. Yu Qianqiu walked up the stairs. A middle-aged man with a sturdy physique flashed past the door. He blocked Yu Qianqiu's way with a cold expression and pointed at the wooden box beside the door. Yu Qianqiu had already inquired about the rules here. Storage bags were not allowed in, so he had already put them away in the golden bead. He nodded and threw a high-grade spirit stone in his hand. The middle-aged man immediately stepped aside. Anyone who entered the Sutra Pavilion to read the ancient books would have to pay a high-grade spirit stone. Compared to ordinary cultivators, it was indeed too expensive. The treatment of the supporting Immortal Island's disciples was not bad, but it was equivalent to half a year's allowance for a Foundation Establishment disciple. Many disciples who had just reached Foundation Establishment would borrow spirit stones to enter. Yu Qianqiu also knew that the supporting Immortal Island was not trying to earn money from the disciples. The higher the price was actually a way to protect the ancient books in the Sutra Pavilion. It was to prevent some disciples from entering the Sutra Pavilion. Of course, those who were elders and above could enter for free. After entering the door, he only took a few steps before he was blocked by a layer of light screen. Disciples who were not Foundation Establishment cultivators could not enter. Yu Qianqiu circulated his quintessential essence and stepped in with difficulty. The first floor of the staircase was another layer of light screen. That was a place that only core formation cultivators could enter. He did not have the ability to do so. He turned and walked towards the main hall of the first floor. After passing through a door, he saw a rather big space. There were many wooden boxes hanging at shoulder height. Precious ancient books were stored inside. There were already many people who had arrived before him. A few steps ahead, there was a wooden board with some rules to follow written on it. After Yu Qianqiu took a look, he first walked around and noticed that there were people sitting cross-legged at the side. They did not look like Foundation Establishment disciples. They were probably the people guarding the ancient books in the Sutra Pavilion. Naturally, they were afraid that someone would steal the ancient books. Yu Qianqiu really did have that intention. Seeing that the security was tight, he could only give up and see if there would be a chance in the future. He began to look for the things he wanted in the boxes one by one. The wooden boxes were all marked with what was stored inside. Soon, he found the Imperial Sword technique that he needed in the early Foundation Establishment realm area. He opened the wooden box and found a jade disc inside. He immediately injected his divine sense into it to check. He discovered that the things recorded inside were different from what he saw in the jade disc. They were all fixed with a special method. It was impossible to destroy or tamper with the contents inside. These weren't the things he cared about. The main thing was the content inside. After reading through the nearly 10,000 words, Yu Qianqiu felt a bit of a headache. He couldn't bring this thing out, and he couldn't cultivate here either. Didn't that mean he had to forcefully memorize it? Only now did he realize that one high-grade spirit stone per person, to enter the Sutra Pavilion, was a little too expensive. It seemed like he had to forcefully memorize it here. However, he did not know that this was the brilliance of Fuxian Island. They were afraid that their disciples would bite off more than they could chew. It was no wonder that Fuxian Island had such a messy seniority system. Almost no one accepted disciples. All the cultivation techniques were open to the public and were not reserved. Anyone could cultivate it. As long as you had the talent, you could be stronger than others. You could even be someone's martial uncle or grandmaster. Of course, people like Guan Weiwu, who had their own special skills, were an exception. There were also some extremely talented people who created their own techniques and were not willing to make it public. They would also accept disciples to pass it on. When Yu Qianqiu confirmed that he had memorized the imperial sword technique of nearly 10,000 words, 2 days had passed. Other than cursing in his heart, there was no other way. He wanted to steal it, but he could always feel a faintly discernible gaze staring at him. Originally, he had not eaten well for a few days. In addition to these 2 days, his stomach was groaning. After all, he had not reached the core formation realm and could not eat. Under the vigilant gaze of the inspector, he put the jade disc back to its original place and left. After leaving the Sutra Pavilion and the Cultivation Pavilion, he returned to his courtyard in the Alchemy Pavilion without stopping. He closed the door and hid in his room. His divine sense locked onto Jinzhu and wanted to return to Utopia. Suddenly his body trembled. He retracted his divine sense and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Was it an illusion? Just now, when his divine sense locked onto Jinzhu, he could see the scene in Utopia. Yu Qianqiu locked his divine sense on Jinzhu again. The scene in Utopia was vivid in his mind. It was as if he was looking down at the entire land from a high altitude. Other than the endless purple chaos around him, everything in Utopia was in front of him. The newly appeared mountain and the deep ravine in the middle were all things he had seen in the sky previously. Could it be because he had reached the Foundation Establishment realm? In order to confirm his guess, Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He moved his divine sense slightly, and the bamboo house that had been destroyed and surrounded by green trees appeared in front of him. How was this possible? He moved his divine sense again. Guan Yu and Chen Feng were reorganizing the sea of flowers. His sister was standing with the broken red rabbit, looking into the distance with a gentle and moving expression. It was pitiful. Yu Qianqiu could not help but use his divine sense to approach and call out in his mind, "Sister." Bai Suzhen turned around in a daze, but she did not discover anything. She looked around and said, "Brother, are you back?" "Ah!" Yu Qianqiu screamed in fright and retracted his divine sense. He took a few steps back in the room and stammered, Sister, you can hear me. How is this possible?" Chapter 99. After the shock, Yu Qianqiu calmed himself down and locked onto Jinzhu with his divine sense again. He successfully entered Utopia and quickly scanned the area. Everywhere his divine sense went, the scenes he saw were all like he was there. It was obvious that it was not an illusion. After his cultivation entered the Foundation Establishment stage, his relationship with Jinzhu had changed further. Yu Qianqiu's divine sense was like the ruler of this space, patrolling his great rivers and mountains. Then, his divine sense instantly locked onto Bai Suzhen's side. He saw that her peerless face was still filled with deep doubt as she looked around from time to time. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Guan Yu and Chen Feng in the distance and fell into deep thought. A moment later, he called out affectionately in Bai Suzhen's ear, "Sister." The latter looked around vigilantly. "Sister, I'm Yu Qianqiu. Don't worry and don't speak. I have something to tell you." Yu Qianqiu explained the use of divine sense that he had just discovered through his divine sense. Bai Suzhen's doubts were instantly resolved, and her expression returned to normal. Sister, do you know? In the cultivation world, I can only be completely sure that there are two people who treat me well. When I first stepped into the cultivation world, the first person I met who treated me well was my master, How Sansi. Unfortunately, I only understood it after he died. And the second person is you, sister. Master is dead, so you're the only person I can entrust everything to in the cultivation world, including my life. I couldn't bear the loneliness in the surging world of mortals and heartless cultivators, so I stepped into it. Since I've already walked this path, I don't want to stop so quickly. Elder sister, please allow me to continue. Having elder sister by my side is the most gratifying thing of my life. I only hope that one day when I can't continue or when I'm tired, I can hug elder sister and sleep peacefully. Elder sister, can you understand how I feel? Yu Qianqiu indifferently said. After a moment of silence, Bai Suzhen nodded lightly. Her face blossomed with a beauty that no one had ever seen before. A beauty that was unrestrained. 1,000 years of bitter cultivation was not for the great Tao, but for a walk in the human world. He cultivated as a demon and became a human, but a demon in his heart followed him like a shadow, and he could not get rid of the shackles of the word demon. The dream of the mandarin duck and butterfly 200 years ago had caused his heart to be locked up, and he had resented himself for coming to this world. Now that he could hear Yu Qianqiu's words, the nightmare had disappeared, and his heart had a place to belong. So what if he was a human or a demon? To have a bosom friend for thousands of years. What was there to be worried about? Accompany him. After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking to Bai Suzhen, the image of Chu Ping flashed across his mind. He sighed to himself. I hope she's someone who I can entrust everything to. But his heart, which had been corroded by the darkness in his previous life, found it hard to trust someone completely. Sister, I'll beg you to return Guan Yu and Chen Feng's natal primordial spirits to them later. Yu Qianqiu suddenly said. Bai Suzhen nodded calmly. But I hope you won't agree, Yu Qianqiu said again. Bai Suzhen was stunned, and a hint of resentment flashed across her face. She was intelligent, so how could she not understand her brother's thoughts? He had just said something nice, and now he wanted his sister to be the bad guy, while he was the good guy. Was there such a despicable person? But she still nodded. I have one more request, sister, Yu Qianqiu said coldly. Anyone who comes to our utopia in the future, as long as I haven't informed you, please collect their natal primordial spirits. Bai Suzhen nodded in agreement inside. It seemed like her brother's ambition was not small. Boss is here. Chen Feng, who was planting flowers, suddenly called out in joy. Guan Yu stood up as well. Yu Qianqiu grinned as he appeared beside Bai Suzhen. Bai Suzhen couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. However, Yu Qianqiu acted as if nothing had happened, and waved at his two subordinates. Guan Yu and Chen Feng quickly ran over. I haven't had a drop of water for the past 2 days. I've memorized nearly 10,000 words of the sword manipulation technique. They're all here. Yu Qianqiu pointed at his head and said to the two of them, Go get me something to eat. I'll record it for you too. He took out 2 blank jade archives from his storage pouch and waved them in front of the two of them. Guan Yu and Chen Feng nodded excitedly and immediately ran off to hunt. I want to eat roasted pheasant. Yu Qianqiu did not forget to remind them. He held a jade archive in each hand and concentrated on recording the sword manipulation technique that he had memorized in his mind. He already knew about this recording technique when he was still in Ongquangsung. Unfortunately, he had yet to reach foundation establishment, and his divine sense was not strong enough. Today was his first time using it, so he wondered how effective it would be. After recording it, he infused his divine sense into it to examine it. As expected, it was not a difficult task. While waiting for their food, Bai Suzhen asked for the jade archive, containing the pill formula, and unlocked the last 3 layers of restrictions on it. She also asked for a jade archive to record all the insights she had on formations, and gave it to Yu Qianqiu. Guan Yu and Chen Feng each carried a jar of wine and a roasted pheasant, and gave them to Boss. The latter returned the 2 jade archives containing the sword manipulation technique. After Yu Qianqiu had filled their stomachs with wine and meat, The three of them could not wait to start cultivating. For those who had already reached foundation establishment, sword manipulation flight was not a difficult task. The three of them spent less than half a day to master it. What was difficult was controlling the sword to defend against enemies. Without putting in a lot of effort, it would not be easy to succeed. Seeing that they would not be able to master it in a short period of time, Yu Qianqiu asked Bai Suzhen for their natal primordial divinities in front of Guan Yu and Chen Feng. Bai Suzhen said expressionlessly, "I have my own plans. There's no need for you to nag." She then floated away. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. On the other hand, Guan Yu and Chen Feng came over to comfort him. They told him not to worry too much, and that Sister Bai would never have any ill intentions towards them. He could only shake his head and give up, apologizing profusely to the two of them. The two of them had just received the sword manipulation technique, and were in high spirits. On top of that, it was all thanks to him that they were able to achieve what they had today. So the two of them comforted him again and again. After putting on a show, Yu Qianqiu did not linger. When he returned to his room, he saw Ling Feng and the others the moment he opened the door. The three of them did not expect Yu Qianqiu to be in his room. They all stood up. In their minds, Yu Qianqiu was someone who did not return often, who knew what he was busy with all day long. Yu Qianqiu's mind was preoccupied with other matters. He was not in the mood to chat with them. He waved at them in greeting, drew the sword manipulation technique out of its sheath, and leaped into the air. The three of them were left dumbstruck in the courtyard, reminiscing endlessly. Back then, the four of them were all at the 10th level of the Qi refining realm. Now the difference between them was like heaven and earth. No matter how virtuous the three of them were, they could not help but feel bitter in their mouths. Yu Qianqiu went straight to the sutra depository on his sword. After he entered, he was not interested in the other messy ancient books. He only opened the boxes that contained various techniques. He had already discussed it with Bai Suzhen. He would use his divine sense to inform her as he read in the sutra depository, and Bai Suzhen would record them down one by one in the bamboo house. It did not matter if it was useful or not. As long as it was a cultivation technique, she would take it all. His abnormal behavior attracted the attention of the sutra depository's guard. Other disciples would need to memorize a technique for a long time after they found one. But he only looked through them quickly. After he finished reading one, he immediately switched to another. However, that was all. He did not do anything that violated the rules. The guard could only conclude that he was looking for a technique. Chapter 100. In the dark and bottomless canyon, a stream of light shot out. Yu Qianqiu landed on the peak of the mountain. His longsword circled around his body and returned to its sheath. A smile appeared on his lips as he muttered, "I didn't expect there to be earth fire here. It's a good place to refine pills." His gaze rested on a boulder on the opposite cliff. He nodded slightly and clasped his palms together. He straightened his 4 fingers into 2 pairs and placed them between his eyebrows. With a thought, the long sword on his back was unsheathed with a chong sound. 2 rays of cold light shot out from his storage pouch. In an instant, 3 long swords circled around his body. "Go!" Yu Qianqiu let out a light shout, and his 4 fingers stabbed toward the huge rock on the opposite cliff. The 3 long swords that were circling around his body turned into 3 cold beams of light and shot out. Bang! 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 A series of noises resounded, and the huge rock was shrouded in dust and smoke. The 3 cold beams of light were like beautiful maidens shuttling back and forth, and they took turns to flash in and out of the dust and smoke. The broken pieces of the huge rock fell into the bottomless valley. "Return!" He clenched his fists, and the 3 beams of cold light shot out of the dust and returned to their original positions. After the dust on the opposite peak was blown away by the mountain wind, Yu Qianqiu focused his gaze, and his facial muscles twitched slightly. There were 3 big words "Utopia" engraved on the huge rock. Although it was imposing, it was the kind of big words. However, it was a little crooked and not neat. Sigh. An artifact is indeed an artifact. If I had 3 magic treasure-level longswords, it wouldn't affect my performance. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 3 big words opposite him, and shook his head. A year ago, he picked a set of Guiyuan sword technique from the mini skills he got from the Sutra Pavilion. The reason why he liked it was that after mastering it, he could control multiple swords at the same time to defend against enemies. As his cultivation level increased, the number of swords he could control would also increase. After reading the incantation, Bai Suzhen advised him, "I've never seen this kind of sword incantation, but it seems to be of little value. It's not powerful enough to defend against enemies, so it's not suitable for people in the cultivation world to practice. It's better to change to a more powerful incantation." Yu Qianqiu did not think much of it. In his previous life, when he was involved in group fights, he concluded that the more punches you have, the more experienced you are. Therefore, when he saw the sword technique, he felt that it was fate. He refused. "Sister, didn't you read the sword technique? The higher the cultivation of the person controlling the sword, the higher the grade of the sword, and the greater the power. This principle applies to any sword technique," Bai Suzhen said in annoyance. Seeing that her brother was still indifferent, she was too lazy to say anything more. Some people would only turn back after suffering a loss. Seeing that Bai Suzhen was a little angry, Yu Qianqiu was also a little hesitant. When he returned to supporting Immortal Island, he asked around, but he really did not hear of anyone practicing it. He also did not know which generation of disciples had collected it from outside. But after it was stored in the Sutra Pavilion, no one had practiced it. The reason was just like what his sister had said, it was not powerful enough. Most of the disciples of Supporting Immortal Island practiced the Supporting Immortal Sword technique, passed down from their own sect, and its power was not ordinary. Guan Yu had stayed on Supporting Immortal Island before, and after persuading Chen Feng, the two of them practiced this sword technique. However, for some reason, Yu Qianqiu was a little reluctant to give up. Perhaps it was fate. He clenched his teeth and decided to continue practicing. In a year, the three of them broke through to the middle stage of foundation building. This kind of cultivation speed would be shocking if it was known, but it was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. When they had just reached the early stage of foundation building, the three of them finally got rid of the pain of not daring to casually absorb spirit qi. When they were at the 10th level of qi refinement, piles of spirit stones naturally became their target for absorption. However, after absorbing and refining a top-grade spirit stone into their dantian, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. Although it was not as exaggerated as a drop in the ocean, it was more or less the same. Spirit stones were helpful, but not very much. They did not know how many years it would take for them to increase their cultivation. The only shortcut was elixirs. The solution to this problem naturally fell on Yu Qianqiu. After refining a few cauldrons of vitality pills with the elixir house's spirit herbs, the effect was really very good. But this was not a long-term solution. It was unreasonable to always use the elixir house's spirit herbs, but not give any elixirs to the elixir house. In the end, he turned his attention to hibiscus in the 10,000 fragrance garden. When he had nothing to do, he would go to the 10,000 fragrance garden and chat with hibiscus, causing hibiscus to look for him every day. Then, he instigated hibiscus to ask Ferdinand for the spirit herb seeds. Today she would ask for this kind of spirit herb seed, and tomorrow, she would ask for that kind of spirit herb seed. This kind of thing naturally could not be hidden from Ferdinand. Although it was against the sect's rules, Ferdinand had always turned a blind eye to it. As long as his daughter was happy, it was fine. He kept bringing all kinds of spiritual herb seeds to Utopia, causing Guan Yu and Chen Feng to be filled with admiration. These were spiritual herb seeds that were treated as treasures in the cultivation world, not weed seeds. However, Boss could casually bring them over one by one every 2 or 3 days. They had no choice but to be impressed. At the very least, they did not have the ability to do so. With the seeds and the purple chaos, the spirit herb was naturally not a problem. Subsequently, Yu Qianqiu often went to the elixir house to greet his master regularly, then stayed in his own elixir house for a period of time. After living like this for a period of time, he asked for all the seeds in the 10,000 fragrance garden. In the end, hibiscus could not take out any other spirit herb seeds, and Yu Qianqiu also went to concentrate on cultivation without any conscience. This made Ferdinand so angry that he kept yelling. He found an excuse to go to the elixir house many times, but he could not find Yu Qianqiu. Dong! There was a loud noise. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing on the top of the mountain, faintly felt some vibration under his feet. He frowned slightly and turned to look at a figure at the foot of the mountain. He drew his sword and went there. Chen Feng, who was at the foot of the mountain, was laughing wildly. When he saw Yu Qianqiu coming, he waved and smiled. "Boss, it's done." Yu Qianqiu landed on the ground and looked around. He saw a huge rock that was several meters in size lying there, but it was now broken into a pile. Looking at the traces, it was obviously destroyed by an external force. At this moment, Guan Yu flew over from the other side of the mountain. When he landed, he looked at the broken rocks and said in surprise, "Chen Feng, your shield-breaking talisman is made." Chen Feng said proudly, "My Chen family's ancestral talisman craftsmanship is not an undeserved reputation. If it wasn't for the limitation of my cultivation, I would definitely let you guys see the power of talisman Dao." When he was being arrogant, he suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu staring at him indifferently. His voice suddenly became hoarse. He was still a little afraid of this boss. Yu Qianqiu was just curious. During this period of time, under his supervision, Chen Feng began to pick up the old family craftsmanship to cultivate. Since then, he could often hear him boasting about how his Chen family's ancestral talisman craftsmanship was. He did not look like he was talking nonsense. But why had he never heard of a family that was proficient in talisman craftsmanship in the cultivation world with the surname Chen? Seeing that this talisman had such great power, it should be good for self-defense. Yu Qianqiu casually said, "Chen Feng, make me 10 of these shield-breaking talismans." Chen Feng touched his storage bag with a troubled expression. This bag was given to him by his boss. He took out a dozen blank talisman papers and took out a few darker colored ones. He said, "Boss, there are only these few talisman papers that can make shield-breaking talismans. I really can't make 10. After saying that, he felt a little embarrassed. What storage bag, foundation building pills, vitality pills, and all kinds of spells. Boss had given him everything. But in the end, he couldn't even take out a few talismans. "Oh, then make as many as you have. It's better than nothing. Also list out the materials that you need to craft talismans in detail. I'll see if I can get some." Yu Qianqiu thought about it and said. Chen Feng nodded and said, "Boss, I understand." Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else. He disappeared in front of the two of them. When he returned to his room, he opened the door and saw Ling Feng and the other two eating in the courtyard. When the three of them saw him, they stood up and bowed. "Master's Uncle Yu." Although Yu Qianqiu often told them not to call him that, he gave the three of them a feeling of distance. They were still in the same place. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, signaling them to continue eating and not to care about him. He walked out of the courtyard. Ling Feng said behind him, "Master's Uncle Yu, yesterday, Elder Fei of Wamfen Garden came to look for you again. He told me to inform you to go to Wamfen Garden when I see you." "Got it," Yu Qianqiu said without turning his head. In his heart he thought, "Coincidentally, I'm a little hungry. Going to Wamfen Garden is a good time." The long sword shot out and carried him away. The three people in the courtyard looked at Yu Qianqiu fly away with envy. They had been on supporting a mortal island for so many years, but they had never seen someone who lived so carefree. A foundation establishment disciple didn't need to do any work. He played all day long, and no one could see him. Many people in the alchemy pavilion had opinions about him, but the strange thing was that none of the elders in the alchemy pavilion interfered. Even people like Yin Shu turned a blind eye to it. Also, the principal elder of Wanfen Garden came to invite him every other day, but he always ignored her. It was really strange. Beizi let out a dry howl and covered her face with her hands. When will I be able to live like him? Damn, it's even better than the sect leader. Chapter 101. Hey! Yu Qianqiu stopped in the air and looked in the direction of the cultivation pavilion. He saw hundreds of people flying in the sky, It was the first time he saw so many people in supporting Xian Island at once. He stopped the impulse to go and take a look. He shook his head and thought, anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I will ask Old Man Fei later. Other than the alchemy pavilion, the myriad fragrance garden was the place that Yu Qianqiu was most familiar with on supporting Immortal Island. When the disciples outside the main hall saw that it was Yu Qianqiu, they didn't even try to stop him. They only glanced at him before withdrawing their gazes. Yu Qianqiu swaggered in, as if he was returning to his own home. 3 female disciples of different ages stood in front of Ferdinand, who was sitting in the middle of the hall. He seemed to be explaining something to them. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, Ferdinand's face was a little gloomy. He waved at the 3 of them and said, "You can leave first." The 3 of them left. Yu Qianqiu knew the 3 of them. He nodded at them when he passed by them. But he found that the 3 of them didn't look very good. He walked to the middle and casually bowed, "Elder Fei." Then he touched his stomach and said, "Elder Fei, do you have anything to eat here? I haven't eaten for a few days." He said this casually. "Humph. What do you think my Wanfen garden is? I don't have anything for you to eat here." Ferdinand gritted his teeth. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he was full of anger. Every time this guy came, he would either cheat his daughter or get something. If he couldn't get anything, he would get something to eat. In short, Wanfen Garden had become his kitchen. At present, this hooligan simply wouldn't go to the temple if he didn't have something to eat. When he was looking for him, he couldn't find him. When he was hungry, he would come by himself. "Don't you think it's infuriating?" Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "So it's like this. I'm very hungry. I will find something to eat first. This disciple will leave first." After he said this, he turned around and left without hesitation. The muscles on Ferdinand's face twitched. There were signs of an explosion. Yu Qianqiu. Furong, who heard the commotion, dashed out from the back of the hall and shouted. She was holding the cheapest storage pouch, given by Yu Qianqiu in her hand as she hurried over. "Ha! Senior sister. Why are you here?" Yu Qianqiu turned around and said in surprise. He had this expression every time, and Ferdinand hated it very much. Furong nodded and asked weakly, "Are you leaving?" "Sigh. There's nothing I can do about it. You don't know how busy and tired I am at the alchemy pavilion. Senior sister, I haven't eaten for a few days. I'm going to find a place to fill my stomach. I'll come back to play with senior sister later." Yu Qianqiu waved goodbye. Wait, Furong said anxiously. "Senior sister, if there's anything, can you wait until I'm full first?" Yu Qianqiu also felt a little wronged. I. Furong didn't know what to say. She turned her head and looked at Ferdinand timidly. When the latter saw that Yu Qianqiu was lying to his daughter again, his face was full of anger. The beard on his chin moved even though there was no wind. When he suddenly saw his daughter's tangled face and pitiful eyes looking at him, as if asking for help, Ferdinand's anger disappeared. His heart was broken. He waved his hand weakly and said, "Take him to the back to eat something." In fact, with Ferdinand's cultivation at the early stage of tribulation passing, he didn't need to eat the 5 grains of the secular world. However, his daughter hadn't reached the core formation stage yet, so she still needed to eat. Therefore, he specially asked someone to buy all kinds of delicious food. However, his daughter rarely ate them. At the sight of her thin and weak body, Ferdinand's heart was filled with endless remorse. In the rear hall of the main hall, Hibiscus acted like she was presenting a treasure. She filled the table with the food that Ferdinand had asked someone to buy. Yu Qianqiu unceremoniously grabbed them and stuffed them into his mouth. He kept mumbling, "Delicious, delicious. Wow. I've eaten that before. It's the roast duck from China's capital Quanxi. I haven't eaten it for a long time. Senior sister, please help me bring it over." Yu Qianqiu stuffed a piece of foie gras in his mouth and pointed at the roast duck with a drumstick. Furong obediently brought it over. When Ferdinand, who was sitting at the side, saw Yu Qianqiu eating like that, he felt a little distressed. These were all things that he bought for his daughter to eat. But Yu Qianqiu looked like he wouldn't stop until he finished eating. Yu Qianqiu occasionally glanced at him and thought, "Old thing, you forced me to help your daughter carry feces for more than a year. Now, I'm here to collect interest. It'll be a waste if I don't eat. He grabbed a pot of wine and gulped at the mouth of the pot, bringing the food in his mouth into his stomach. Suddenly, he was stunned and said, "Senior sister, don't just watch me eat. You eat too." As he was speaking, he tore off a duck drumstick and handed it over. "Senior sister, I won't be happy if I don't finish it." Farong nodded obediently. She took the drumstick with her slender hands and started to nibble it carefully. Every time at this moment, Ferdinand would look at Yu Qianqiu with a calmer gaze. Whether these words were meant to deceive his daughter or not, at least it was a white lie that was beneficial to his daughter's health. "Elder Ferdinand, when I came just now, I saw hundreds of people from the Pavilion of Cultivation flying out of Fuxian Island together. Did something happen outside the island?" Yu Qianqiu was good at grasping the timing of the question. He knew that this was the time when Ferdinand was least disgusted with him. Farong bit the duck drumstick with her slender teeth and looked curiously at her father, who she had never called father before. It seemed that she was also waiting for his answer. Anyway, as long as it was a topic that Yu Qianqiu brought from outside, she was very interested to know. This was because she was never willing to get in touch with others. Yu Qianqiu was an exception. Ferdinand subconsciously looked at his daughter's ruined face and said in a deep voice, "It's all because of Ong Kwangsung." "Ong Kwangsung?" Yu Qianqiu asked. He found that Farong had almost finished eating the duck, so he casually picked up a pig trotter and handed it over. He said, "There are only bones left. Don't eat it. Eat this." Since he was full, he was in the mood to invite others to eat. Farong put down the bone in her hand and took the pig trotter to eat slowly. She was still listening to the conversation between the two. Suddenly, she found that the thing in her hand was not easy to eat, but she still bit it carefully. As long as it was something that Yu Qianqiu told her to eat, she would eat it no matter how disgusting it was. Ferdinand paused for a while and said, "Ong Kwangsung took the lead and organized a demon-slaying conference. He pulled in some small sects and made trouble everywhere. He kept killing people from the diabolism. In the end, he killed the grandson of the great elder of the Blood Demon Palace. The Blood Demon Palace is the second big sect in the diabolism. Even when compared to the 10,000 demons, they are not much inferior. How would they be afraid of the Bulsh*T demon slaying conference that Ong Kwangsung organized?" In a fit of anger, half of the Blood Demon Palace dispatched people. They destroyed 7 to 8 orthodox sects and even attacked Ong Kwangsung. Fortunately, Ong Kwangsung is not an ordinary sect that is outwardly strong but inwardly weak. There are quite a few experts hidden inside, and they actually withstood the attack. For the time being, the Blood Demon Palace's plan couldn't be carried out. However, they also couldn't hold on for long. When they heard that the opponent was going to send more people over, Ong Kwangsung also panicked. As a matter of fact, they came to our Fuxian Island under the guise of asking for help. Regarding the demon-slaying conference, Yu Qianqiu had heard Yan Zixia mention it before. However, he didn't expect that Ong Kwangsung would actually make such a big fuss. His heart was a little confused. "Chu Ping, or was still in Ong Kwangsung?" He hurriedly asked. "Did those people who went out from the cultivation pavilion go to Ong Kwangsung to help?" Chapter 102. Ferdinand nodded and said, "That's right. Who told our Fuxian Island to bear the name of the number 1 righteous path. It's not good to refuse the joint request of people of the same path. We have already sent 100 people to stabilize the situation. The people of our Fuxian Island sent news that this time, Ong Kwangsung has caused too much damage to the demonic path. Even the 10,000 demons is a bit restless, so the sect sent another 500 people. Mainly because we are worried that our people will be at a disadvantage in case of an emergency. So we have to prepare in advance." Yu Qianqiu asked, "Ong Kwangsung has suffered a big loss this time, right?" "The loss is not small," Ferdinand sneered. He was probably laughing at Ong Kwangsung for overestimating himself. Yu Qianqiu was concerned about Chu Pinger. After thinking for a while, he asked, "I'm afraid that most of the losses are disciples with low cultivation like us, right?" After saying that, his expression was a bit gloomy. Ferdinand sneered and said, What are you thinking? How can you disciples, who haven't even reached the core formation stage, get involved in such a battle? Ong Kwang Sung will not send some disciples in the foundation establishment stage to make a fool of themselves until he is completely dead. Oh, Yu Qianqiu got the answer he wanted and finally breathed a sigh of relief. As for Ong Kwang Sung's life or death, he would not care, as long as Chu Pinger was fine. Hey, Elder Ferdinand, I just heard you telling your 3 disciples to be careful where they go. Is your Wanfen Garden also going to send people to Ong Kwang Sung? Yu Qianqiu asked again. Fu Xian Island doesn't need Wanfen Garden to fight, unless all the people of the cultivation pavilion are dead. Ferdinand added. I think you have lost your mind. You don't even know the date of the Demon Ghost Domain. Demon Ghost Domain? Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, the trial of the Demon Ghost Domain, that happens once every 5 years, is about to start. His face twisted unnaturally. He knew about this matter. Every 5 years, Fu Xian Island would select the more outstanding disciples to go to the trial of the Demon Ghost Domain. It was a dangerous activity with a very high elimination rate. The so-called elimination rate was death, but the sect would spend a lot of effort to train those who could come back alive. To put it bluntly, the sect would train these people as future successors. However, to get such training, one had to risk their lives. Every time, half of the people who went would come back. The boundless demon ghost region was a place where demons and ghosts gathered. Even a sect as powerful as supporting Immortal Island couldn't enter the center of the demon ghost region. However, it was precisely because there were few people there that spirit herbs, which were almost extinct in other places, could often be seen there. The spirit herbs in the 10,000 Fragrance Garden were all brought back by the disciples, who went to the 10,000 Fragrance Garden to cultivate. This was how the 10,000 Fragrance Garden was able to grow to its current size. Ferdinand said disdainfully, "It looks like you're afraid of being chosen? I think you should just put your heart at ease. No matter how bad the alchemy pavilion is, it doesn't seem like they would allow a disciple like you to enter the ranks of outstanding disciples. Why can't I be considered outstanding?" Yu Qianqiu's words were on the tip of his tongue, but he stopped himself with a smile. It was too inauspicious to say that he was outstanding at this time. If he was really selected, then it would be like seeing a ghost. He still had a lot of things to do. Ferdinand snorted coldly. Greedy for life and afraid of death, good for nothing. Aya, senior sister, the pork trotters won't taste good when they're cold. Try this. Yu Qianqiu changed the topic as he served a plate of beef to Furong. Yu Qianqiu, who had eaten and drank to his heart's content, accompanied the father and daughter pair, and fooled around for a while. Then, he found an excuse and left under Furong's reluctant gaze. With a full stomach, he slowly returned to the alchemy pavilion on his sword. Under the envious eyes of many disciples, Yu Qianqiu entered the main hall, and went deep into the underground alchemy room. Every time he went to the 10,000 Fragrance Garden to have a sumptuous meal, he would come here to communicate with his master. Then, he would openly go to his private alchemy room, and stealthily refine pills for himself. In the largest alchemy room underground, Guan Weiwu was fully devoted to his beloved alchemy. Yu Qianqiu walked over and bowed. Master. Guan Weiwu turned his head to look and said happily, "Did you refine any pills again?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said shamefully, "Disciple is ignorant and still can't produce anything. Disciple will go back and continue to work hard." Guan Weiwu nodded, and there was a trace of disappointment in his eyes. It had been more than a year. How could this disciple's talent disappear like a meteor after a dazzling light? Then he sighed again. This disciple is not good, but the method of controlling the airflow with his divine sense is still far behind him as a master. Why can't I practice this seemingly simple thing? A master is not as good as a disciple. How can I teach? He also knew that Yu Qianqiu was not diligent in alchemy, but when he thought that he was not as good as his disciple in some aspects, how could he open his mouth to teach? Before Yu Qianqiu could completely walk out of Guan Weiwu's alchemy room, he was blocked by a person at the entrance. He looked up and saw that it was the only enemy of the alchemy pavilion, Yin Shu. The latter actually smiled strangely at him, really looking for a beating. If I had a brick, I would have smashed you to death. That smile was too hateful. His master was behind him. Yu Qianqiu bowed unhappily and said, Deacon Yan. Yan Shu nodded and said with a smile, Yu Qianqiu, congratulations. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. The sun rose from the west today. He could not help but ask, what's there to congratulate me for? Congratulations on becoming our alchemy pavilion's outstanding disciple, Yin Shu said with a smile. Yu Qianqiu pointed at himself. Suddenly, a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Yin Shu did not say anything. He brushed past him and walked to Guan Weiwu's side. He bowed and said, Elder Guan, the alchemy pavilion's outstanding disciple, who participated in the demon domain trial, has been reported to the sect. The sect has already accepted it. It had already indirectly confirmed his thoughts. Yu Qianqiu shook his head in disbelief. His intuition told him that there was something fishy going on. Moreover, it must be related to that bastard Yin Shu. He did not believe that there was anyone in the alchemy pavilion who did not know that he was a glutton and lazy. How could they have designated him as an outstanding disciple? Got it. Guan Weiwu waved his hand and signaled him to leave. Deacon Yan, please wait. I have something to ask. Yu Qianqiu blocked Yin Shu's way out. Normally, Yin Shu's face would already be covered with dark clouds. However, at this time he was very patient. He wore a thought-provoking smile and said, Ask whatever you want. I will definitely tell you everything I know. Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. What did you say about me becoming an outstanding disciple of the alchemy pavilion? I don't think I'm qualified. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was unhappy, Yin Shu's smile became even wider. This time, the outstanding disciples who participated in the demon domain trial were personally decided by Elder Guan. There are 5 nascent soul, core formation and foundation establishment. Elder Guan said that you should also be a foundation establishment outstanding disciple. So you are one of the 5. Chapter 103. It had to be said that Yin Shu was able to become a deacon of the alchemy pavilion. In addition to his father's background, he also had a good understanding of Guan Weiwu's temper. When the sect asked each branch to report their outstanding disciples to participate in the Demon Ghost Region trial, Yin Shu immediately thought that it was a good opportunity to get rid of Yu Qianqiu. After he reported the matter to Guan Weiwu, he just reminded him, Elder Guan, is Yu Qianqiu considered an outstanding disciple of the alchemy pavilion? Do you want to participate in this trial? Guan Weiwu was silent. Although Yu Qianqiu was not good at other things, and was relatively lazy, he was still his disciple. Moreover, his alchemy skills were far inferior to him. In the alchemy pavilion, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was an outstanding disciple. So he pondered and said, Yu Qianqiu will be listed as an outstanding disciple in the foundation establishment stage, and participate in the trial. As for the others, you can discuss with the seniors in the nascent soul stage. Yin Shu bowed and accepted the order. Yes. This was how it happened. If Yin Shu didn't remind Guan Weiwu, the latter would definitely wave his hand and say that he didn't dare to include Yu Qianqiu. However, after reminding him, Yin Shu already knew the result. Master, you really want me to go to the Demon Ghost region for the trial? Yu Qianqiu walked a few steps to his master and asked. Yin Shu smiled and didn't say anything. Guan Weiwu's face was solemn. He also knew that the Demon Ghost region was a very dangerous place, but people were selfish. Since Yu Qianqiu was his personal disciple, and he couldn't be in charge of the alchemy pavilion forever, it was better to leave the alchemy pavilion to his disciple in the future. As long as Yu Qianqiu could survive the Demon Ghost region, it would undoubtedly be able to shut many people's mouths in the future. Go. I'm also doing this for your own good. Guan Weiwu sighed. Master, it is very dangerous there. If I go, I'm afraid I won't be able to see Master again. Yu Qianqiu begged. Guan Weiwu frowned slightly and thought to himself, even if you're afraid of death, you don't have to say it out loud. You might not be afraid of losing face, but I am. His face stiffened as he shook his head. How can we change the matter that has already been reported to the sect? Wouldn't that be child's play? Sigh. You don't have to worry too much. The leading elders know that you are my direct disciple, so they will naturally know what to do. There won't be much danger. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. It turned out that he could go easy on this matter. In that case, it wouldn't be a bad thing to go for a stroll and broaden his horizons. But he didn't forget to remind. Disciple will naturally obey master's words. But master, don't forget to greet the leading elders. Guan Weiwu glanced at Yen Shu with an awkward expression. This disciple of his didn't care about the occasion. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Got it, you can go back first." Obtaining his master's promise, Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief as he walked out of the alchemy pavilion's main hall. But he still felt a little uneasy. This matter was really a little fishy. Not long after he left the main hall, he heard Yen Shu's voice coming from behind him. "Yu Qianqiu, the day after tomorrow at sunrise, the participating disciples will gather here. Don't forget the time." Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him when he heard it, and walked away on his own. Yen Shu then said behind him, "Oh right, I forgot to tell you, I'm also participating in this time's trial." "What? You're also participating?" Yu Qianqiu turned around abruptly and asked. The other party sneered and said, "Yes, you didn't hear wrongly." His words were filled with a trace of coldness. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry and rushed back into the alchemy pavilion's main hall. It was clear that Yen Shu wanted to kill him this time, so he had to make preparations early. Yen Shu was taken aback before he sneered and muttered, "It's too late to regret it now. Even your master can't change the person who has already been reported." He thought that Yu Qianqiu would go back to plead with his master, but that was not the case. Yu Qianqiu ran into the underground space and went straight to his private alchemy room. He grabbed the pill furnace and sent it into Utopia. He wanted to get what he needed first. He finally understood that Yen Shu would not let him go unless he killed him. In that case, it would depend on who killed who. He did not believe that he would not be able to kill him when he pulled by Suzhen, who was at the end of the Tribulation Transcendence stage. If he couldn't kill him, he would not return. He would leave as soon as possible and take revenge in the future. Yang Qian, who was instructing people, saw Yu Qianqiu rush into the alchemy room. He did not know what had happened and followed him. When he entered, he was shocked. The pill furnace in the middle of the alchemy room had disappeared, and there was only a special black heat-insulating iron plate on the ground. Yu Qianqiu's expression did not look good. "Yu Qianqiu, where did you put the pill furnace?" Yang Qian asked. "Oh, Grandmaster Yang, it's nothing." Yu Qianqiu patted the storage bag on his waist and said, "I put the pill furnace inside. Master asked me to participate in the Demon Ghost Domain trial, and told me to bring the pill furnace with me. I'll practice more when I'm free." "What? Elder Guan asked you to participate in the Demon Ghost Domain trial?" Yang Qian said in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu sighed and walked out. "I've taken it away. You guys can do whatever you want. Anyway, I won't take it out." As soon as he left, Yang Qian immediately came to Guan Weiwu and told him what had happened. The latter was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "I know. Let him be. Let the equipment refining pavilion forge another pill furnace." It seemed that Yu Qianqiu was going to the Demon Ghost Domain trial. However, Yang Qian could not figure it out. Since he was going to participate in the trial, where did he bring the pill furnace to practice? Could it be in the Demon Ghost Domain? Was this a joke? Yu Qianqiu left the hall and flew straight to the 10,000 Fragrance Garden. Fei Dinan, who was sitting in the main hall, felt strange when he saw him again. This kid usually did not show up for a few days after eating. Today, he actually came again after leaving for a while. Did he not eat enough? Why are you here again? Fei Dinan found that his expression was a little bad. Yu Qianqiu walked to the chair on the side and sat down with his legs spread wide. He said angrily, "Master asked me to participate in the Demon Ghost Domain trial." Fei Dinan was stunned. He looked at him and sneered. "What's your intention? Just say it. Guan Weiwu asked you to participate in the trial? Is there really no one in the alchemy pavilion?" He did not believe it at all. After getting along with him for so long, he could see that it was good if 1 out of 10 of this kid's words were true. Under normal circumstances, he would lie with his eyes open, and his expression would not change. Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a bitter smile and said, I don't believe it either, but it's true. Master said it himself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to you. Is what you said true? Fei Dinan asked suspiciously. Do I look like a liar to you? Yu Qianqiu said snappily. Of course it's true. Fei Dinan directly ignored the first half of his sentence. After listening to the second half of the sentence, he frowned and stood up. He had no choice but to pay attention to it. Who asked his precious daughter to not leave him? If something really happened to Yu Qianqiu, how could he explain it to his daughter? After thinking for a while with his eyes flickering, Fei Dinan's eyebrows relaxed. He seemed to have figured something out. He shook his head and said with a smile, I see. No wonder he never cared about this matter. Why did he suddenly care about it? I can't tell that the old pill addict actually has an ulterior motive. Yu Qianqiu, don't worry and go. Your master will arrange it. There won't be much danger. Yu Qianqiu did not know what he was talking about, so he directly said, Master also said the same thing to you. I don't know what tricks there are between the higher-ups, but I know that Yin Shu, that bastard, will definitely kill me this time. Help me think about what to do. Chapter 104. Yen Tuo's son Yin Shu? Ferdinand was surprised. Yen Tuo is willing to let his precious son go to Monster Ghost region for the trial? It's his business whether he's willing or not, and I can't control it. However, Yin Shu told me personally that he's going too, so it can't be fake. I have a grudge against him, and you know that. I'm afraid I'll be in danger if I go to Monster Ghost region with him. Yu Qianqiu said as he gestured at his neck with his hand. Ferdinand was silent. If Yin Shu really wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu in Monster Ghost region, it wouldn't be difficult. With his core formation late-stage cultivation, it wouldn't take him much effort to kill a Foundation Establishment stage disciple. What's more, no one could say for sure who killed a disciple in the demon domain. Yu Qianqiu, for this trial in Monster Ghost region, our Wanfen Garden isn't as good as the other branches. But we've chosen a disciple from each of the nascent soul, core formation, and foundation establishment stages to participate. You know all three of them. Follow them closely. With Yen Shu's core formation stage cultivation, he can't do anything to you. Ferdinand pondered as he stroked his beard. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He was waiting for this. Although he wasn't afraid of Yen Shu, it was better to have more people than none. He got up from the chair and said with a smile, Then I'll have to trouble Elder Fei. I'll go back and make preparations first. With that he swaggered out. Time passed quickly. The three people in Utopia had different thoughts about Yu Qianqiu going to Monster Ghost region. Guan Yu knew how high the death rate of Fuxian Island was. He was a little worried, but he didn't say much. Chen Feng was very loyal to Boss. In his heart, Boss was omnipotent and he worshipped her blindly. Bai Suzhen only had one sentence. Call me out when you're in danger. In front of the Alchemy Pavilion's main hall, 15 disciples of different cultivation levels were ready to go, surrounded by a group of disciples watching. Guan Weiwu, who rarely appeared, was standing on the steps, looking at the disciples with a serious expression. Although he had seen such scenes many times, he couldn't help but feel a little emotional. He didn't know how many people would come back alive. With a sweep of his gaze, his disciple, Yu Qianqiu, was hiding at the back of the group of 5 Foundation Establishment cultivators looking around. Compared to the others, he had an indifferent look. His mentality was not bad. Guan Weiwu nodded approvingly and waved to the crowd. Let's go, follow me to Punglai Pavilion. Guan Weiwu was the first to fly into the air, followed by the 15 disciples. 15 long swords were unsheathed at the same time. Shwa shwa shwa. Their imposing manner was astonishing. In an instant, they stepped on their swords and followed Elder Guan. Many of the surrounding disciples were shaking their heads and sighing. They sighed at how many of these people had gone, and how many of them had returned. There were also some disciples who revealed expressions of amazement and envy when they saw the seniors step on their swords together. Most of these people were disciples who hadn't reached the Foundation Establishment stage, so they didn't consider the dangers of the seniors' trip. Instead, they envied the seniors' ability to fly on their swords. The kind of mountain you stand on, the kind of firewood you cut. This sentence was very reasonable. In the crowd, Ling Feng and the other two watched Yu Qianqiu fly at the back and sighed endlessly. They were also depressed. When did he become an outstanding disciple? In front of Penglai Pavilion's main hall, when Guan Weiwu arrived with his people, there were already many people standing there. There were more people arriving one after another. Each faction stood in their own place, and the ones standing in front of each faction were the elders in charge of each faction. Yu Qianqiu craned his head and looked around. There were about 300 to 400 people here, and the Cultivation Pavilion faction, standing at the easternmost side, had the most people. There was a huge pile of people standing there. Their faction alone probably accounted for half of the people here. There were dozens of elders standing on the steps of the main hall. The sect master in the middle, Feng Xiangtian, looked at everyone with a solemn expression. An elder whispered a few words in his ear, and he nodded. The elder took out a small compass with a leg stand from his storage bag, shot a white light at it, and threw it forward. The compass instantly became as big as a dining table and stood in front of the main hall. The elder then cupped his hands towards the elders in charge of each faction and made a gesture of invitation. At this time, the Cultivation Pavilion on the east side moved first. The elders in charge of the faction led the disciples toward the compass. Yu Qianqiu did his best to crane his head. He really wanted to see what exactly was going on. Unfortunately, there were too many people, and his line of sight was blocked. It wasn't until it was the Alchemy Pavilion's turn that Yu Qianqiu's curiosity was satisfied. It was like a big drum, and it was filled with dense horizontal and vertical lines like a chessboard. There were 4 palm-shaped ears in each of the 4 directions. When they got closer, the elder kept reminding the disciples to place their palms on the ears of the compass and insert a strand of divine sense. After the insertion was successful, the ears of the compass would flash with a white light. After Yu Qianqiu did as he was told, he thought to himself, "What is this thing?" Each time, for people could insert their divine sense at the same time. It took a few hundred people less than an hour to finish. The elder used a spell to put away the compass. Soon after, 9 elders walked down the steps from behind the sect master. The 10 elders stood in a row and bowed to the sect master. According to Yu Qianqiu's estimation, it should be time for the gang leader to speak. Unexpectedly, Feng Xiangtian raised his hand and took out a small boat. He used a spell and threw it into the air. The small boat grew in the wind above everyone's heads. After a few moments, a big boat blocked the sky above everyone's heads, and it was dark below. Feng Xiangtian used another spell. The bottom of the big boat split open, and a floor appeared in front of the hall. It formed a staircase leading to the cabin. Feng Xiangtian nodded to the 10 elders. 5 of them immediately came out and took the stairs to board the boat. The other 5 guarded the stairs. The Cultivation Pavilion started, and the disciples of each faction also started to board the boat. Before Yu Qianqiu boarded the boat, he looked at his master affectionately. Then he turned around and boarded the boat. When he got on the boat, he realized that the boat was really big. An elder came over to instruct them to sit cross-legged with their own faction's people. There weren't even stools, so they just sat on the floor. He just happened to sit on the wall of the boat. When the other 5 elders came up, they announced that everyone had boarded. What made Yu Qianqiu a little depressed was that he wanted to listen to the spirit of the gang leader's speech. Unfortunately, Feng Xiangtian didn't say a word from beginning to end. He maintained the dignity of a sect leader very well. When the surrounding scenery changed, everyone knew that the boat was already on the way to the demon ghost region. For a moment, many people's expressions became solemn. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Yin Shu, who was resting with his eyes closed. He turned around to look for the 3 female disciples of Wanfen Garden. He found them sitting at the very back. There was also a girl next to them, who looked a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen her before. Senior Marshal Brother Quan. Is that Senior Marshal Brother Guan's disciple? An elder asked the elder next to him. The elder, who was referred to as Senior Brother Quan, looked in the direction he was pointing at and saw Yu Qianqiu leaning against the wall of the ship sleeping. There was a faint sheen of moisture at the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, the other disciples with high cultivation were resting with their eyes closed. Those with low cultivation were generally a little uneasy. Obviously, they were a little afraid of going to the demon ghost region. However, this was also human nature. Most of them were disciples who left the island for the first time. But that kid was a little too much. He could actually fall asleep and drool. Wasn't he worried at all? Elder Quan looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook his head slightly with a wry smile. That time in the alchemy pavilion, he was also one of the elders who watched Yu Qianqiu refine pills with the sect leader. How could he not know him? He turned his head and said to the person next to him, "Junior Marshal Brother Son, it is Yu Qianqiu who Senior Marshal Brother Guan asked us to take care of." Haha, this kid is a little interesting. He is really worthy of being Senior Marshal Brother Guan's personal disciple. Elder Sun laughed. Another round of sun rose. An elder standing at the bow of the boat reached out his hand to block the dazzling sunlight. He looked into the distance and saw that the distant sky was covered with gloomy clouds. It seemed incompatible with the rising sun. He turned around and glanced at everyone in the cabin. He shouted in a deep voice, "The demon ghost region is in front of us. Everyone get ready." Chapter 105. Everyone in the cabin stood up, including Yu Qianqiu. He stood up with a start and wiped the liquid from the corner of his mouth. He stuck his head out of the side of the ship and looked around. The flying boat flew at high speed. Not long after, the white clouds in front of them were replaced by dark clouds. As they flew further, the land was shrouded in a dense fog, and the scenery on the ground was faintly discernible. As far as the eyes could see, it was a boundless haze, and it seemed extremely strange. The sound of the flying ship piercing through the air became louder and louder. It flew faster and faster, as if it wanted to fly through the darkness below. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from afar. Many people's expressions changed as they looked towards the source of the sounds. There seemed to be a few flying ships in the sky above the clouds. They seemed to be flying in the same direction as the people from supporting Immortal Island. Everyone, don't panic. It's the other sects that are here to gain experience. The elder at the bow shouted at everyone. He turned back and squinted at the flying ship that was also flying over. Yu Qianqiu recognized him. This elder was the Cultivation Pavilion's Dongfang elder. His cultivation had reached the middle stage of the Crossing Calamity stage. Everyone felt relieved when they heard that it was the other sects that were here to gain experience. Not long after, 5 similar flying ships flew over and flew side by side with the supporting Immortal Island ship. The 6 ships flew in the same direction. Damn it! Don't tell me that Ong Kwangsung is among them. I'm very famous in Ong Kwangsung. Almost everyone knows me. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully for a long time. He was relieved when he realized that they were all sects that he didn't know. A mountain that broke through the clouds suddenly appeared in front of them. It caused many people to exclaim that there was such a tall mountain. The 6 ships slowed down and flew to the peak of the mountain. They spread out in a hexagonal formation and stopped. Other than the Dongfang elder, the other 9 elders of supporting Immortal Island jumped off the ship. People from the other sects also jumped off. Yu Qianqiu leaned on the side of the ship and watched. He saw the people from the other sects meeting, as if they were discussing something. Then they quickly spread out. Light flashed continuously around the mountain peak. It was obvious that the sects were working together to set up some formation. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Elder Dongfang shouted from the bow, "All disciples disembark." Without a word, Yu Qianqiu climbed over the side of the ship and was the first to jump down. As soon as he landed, he saw a black shadow flash in front of him. There seemed to be something extra in his chest. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. He looked suspiciously at Elder Sun beside him. If he wasn't mistaken, it was this Elder Sun who had stuffed something into his chest. He reached his hand out to see what it was when a voice transmission suddenly sounded in his ear. "Don't look at it now, but there are 10 Vajra talismans inside. Each talisman can resist a late-stage nascent soul cultivator's attack for a quarter of an hour. It's enough for you to save your life 10 times in an emergency. There is also a jade stone from me and Elder Quan. If you really have no other choice, you can crush one of them, and one of us will come to save you. Remember, Don't use the jade stone unless you have no other choice. Otherwise, it'll be easy for others to find out that you're cheating. After descending the mountain, don't go more than 500 kilometers away from the foot of the mountain. Remember, don't go south. That direction leads to the center of the demon domain. There are all kinds of powerful demons and ghosts there. Even a late-stage transcending tribulation cultivator can't guarantee their safety. Boy, remember my words well. Don't waste your master's efforts. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He looked at Elder Sun who was beside him, and then at Elder Quan who was not far away. The two of them were the same as the other elders who had come this time. They were both elders of the cultivation pavilion. It turned out that his master had already arranged for them to be spies. Yu Qianqiu was moved. He silently nodded. Elder Sun glanced at him and walked away without saying a word. Originally, all the disciples were sitting together on the ship, but after jumping off the ship they scattered. Yu Qianqiu didn't notice that there was a disciple from the alchemy pavilion next to him. He looked around and was startled. Yan Shu was looking at him with a sneer. There were more than 10 people standing behind him. They were obviously in cahoots with some bastard. Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. That's Elder Yan's disciple from the utility hall. Yu Qianqiu, you're in big trouble. A woman's voice came from behind him. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and immediately said happily, Ancestor Ko, Martial Uncle Morong, Senior Sister Mei, long time no see. I missed you so much. They were the 3 disciples sent by Wanfen Garden to gain experience. As soon as he finished speaking, a beautiful woman standing next to the 3 acquaintances covered her mouth and giggled. There were too many beautiful women in Wanfen Garden. They often hung out together, so Yu Qianqiu's nerves were a bit numb. Looking at beautiful women was like looking at cabbages. He glanced at them indifferently and asked, This is? I don't think I've seen you in Wanfen Garden before. The woman stopped laughing and introduced herself. Early stage core formation, Xiao Wanqing. We've met before in Wanfen Garden's main hall. At the time, my master Elder Qiu and I were treating Furong's leg injury. What? You don't remember anything? Oh, I remember now. So it's Martial Uncle Xiao. Yu Qianqiu slapped his forehead and bowed. Xiao Wanqing smiled nonchalantly and glanced at the 4 of them. Her eyes turned into crescents. My safe pavilion doesn't have many people to begin with. This time, they only sent me out to gain experience. I see that the 4 of you want to go together. I happen to have no one by myself. Can you bring me along? Welcome, welcome. Yu Qianqiu wanted as many people as possible. Plus, it was a core formation cultivator. He immediately welcomed her warmly. Then, he turned around and raised his chin in Yan Shu's direction. If you have people, so do I. Plus, they are the 4 beauties. Yan Shu sneered disdainfully, turned around and ignored him. The 6 flying shuttles floating in the air were all put away. The 6 sects gathered at the top of the mountain, and it immediately became lively. There was a place where hundreds of beauties gathered. It immediately caught Yu Qianqiu's attention. Other than the Moon Clan, which only accepted female disciples, there was no other sect like this. When he looked at the other sects, Yu Qianqiu saw a familiar face. He choked. Years ago, in the 100 Flowers Valley, he drank with a guy who called himself 10,000 Demons Qiu Wuyuan. That guy mocked him a little, so he had a deep impression of his face. Who else could this person be if not Qiu Wuyuan? What's going on? Why are the diabolical sects and the righteous sects together? Looking at how arrogant this old guy is in that group, he seems to have a high status. Did I mistake him for someone else? The more Yu Qianqiu looked at him, the more he felt that he was right. He looked exactly the same as the Qiu Wuyuan in his memory. That Qiu Wuyuan seemed to feel that someone was observing him. He suddenly turned around and looked arrogant. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he was also stunned. Then, he smiled and nodded in a friendly manner. Damn! He smiled at me. It really is the 10,000 Demons Qiu Wuyuan. Yu Qianqiu was already sure that it was him. Looking at the clothes of the people around him, he was definitely from the same sect. Ancestor Ko, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why do I see people from the 10,000 demons here too? Yu Qianqiu turned around and said in surprise. The righteous sects and diabolical sects had always been incompatible. Now they were actually training together. He couldn't help but be surprised. Chapter 106. Ko Shuehua, who was at the nascent soul stage, had the appearance of a charming young woman. She looked at Yu Qianqiu with surprise. In the supporting immortal island, disciples with low cultivation like him had never come into contact with the cultivation world before they started cultivating. Very few of them had ever left the island. How could he recognize someone from the myriad devil's palace? Then she remembered that he was a lone cultivator and understood. He nodded and said, "They are indeed people from the myriad demon's palace. The supporting immortal island, the Daoyuo sect, and the Moon sect are the top 3 sects of the righteous Dao, and the top 3 sects of the demonic Dao. The myriad demon's palace, blood demon palace, and corpse sect are all here. Most of the disciples of the 6 major sects, who have participated in the trial in the demon ghost domain, will keep their mouths shut about this matter. So you don't know. I participated in it when I was in the foundation establishment and core formation stages. So I know more than you." Those who had not experienced this before looked at each other in dismay. No one had expected that there would be such a secret in the demon domain trial. TSK. This was the 3rd time, Martial Ancestor Ko. Looks like you'll be the next chief elder of Wanfen Garden when we get back. Yu Qianqiu wasn't trying to flatter him. This was the rule of the supporting immortal island. Those who could survive the 3 calamities at the 3 cultivation stages would mostly be nurtured as the successor of the main branch. If there were many competitors, as long as their cultivation reached a certain level, they would at least become an elder. If Yu Qianqiu knew that his master Guan Weiwu also wanted him to go through 3 trials and take over as the next chief elder, what would he think? Let's not talk about the future. It's more important to go back alive. Ko Shuehua slowly looked down the mountain. She seemed to be thinking of something. Hihi. The Blood Demon Palace's strength is indeed extraordinary. They are competing with the Blue Light School over there. And they still have the mood to participate in the demon domain trials here. Yu Qianqiu looked at the group of people in blood-red clothes and laughed. Then, his gaze fell on a group of people from the righteous sect dressed in khaki-colored clothes. His eyes narrowed slightly as he asked in a deep voice, "Ancestral Master Ko, are those people in yellow the disciples of the exalted sect?" Ko Shuehua looked back and nodded. "Yes." "Oh, Daoyuo sect. I've heard a lot about you," Yu Qianqiu said word by word. A cold light flashed in his squinted eyes. Elder Dongfang Chang'eo, was the host of this trial. After meeting with the other 5 sects, he came back to see his own sect's disciples forming their own groups, hoping that they could survive this ordeal safely with their numbers. The white-haired Dongfang Changgao stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He frowned and snorted coldly. After that, a powerful aura pressed down on the disciples of the supporting immortal island. Yu Qianqiu felt as though his blood was about to burst out from his 7 apertures. In an instant, everyone quieted down. The aura disappeared without a trace. Dongfang Chang'eo took out the compass from his storage bag and placed it in front of him. He looked at everyone and said, 3 months for nascent soul cultivators, 2 months for core formation cultivators, and 1 month for foundation establishment cultivators. I, Dongfang Chang'eo, and the other 9 elders will await your return. However, those who don't pass the time limit are not allowed to go up the mountain. Otherwise, they will be killed. After that, he cast a spell at the compass. The surface of the compass flashed. He waved his hand and shouted, "All disciples participating in the trial, go down the mountain." No one dared to hesitate. They all jumped down the mountain. When Yu Qianqiu showed the compass to the 4 girls, he couldn't help but take a look. He saw that the light spots on the compass were moving. It turned out to be a magic treasure that knew where people were. Those who had inserted their divine sense into the compass would be shown on it. The sound of footsteps could be heard. The disciples of the other sects had also started to descend the mountain. No one dared to fly. In this place, flying fast was useless. Perhaps even if they flew fast, they would also die fast. The most important thing was to muddle through the time and return safely. The Yin fog was thick like clouds. It was locked in the middle of the mountain. The upper half of the mountain was still sunny, but the lower half of the mountain was covered by the black fog. It was like a rainy day. Not to mention the fact that the Een fog was much dimmer. The Een fog blocked people's vision. Occasionally, one or two strange screams could be heard. The mountain became more and more rugged as they went down. It was like they were in a different world. Some people like Ko Shuehua, who had experience in the devil's domain, drew their weapons. Even the newbies who were affected by the experience also drew their weapons. The atmosphere was so heavy that it was scary. Damn it! It was full of Een energy. It was worthy of the name Demon Region. Yu Qianqiu held a sword in his hand and looked around for Yin Shu and the others. It was better not to be attacked by that bastard. Ko Shuehua said softly, "Don't stop here. Go down the mountain quickly." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He also said softly, "Grandmaster, it's a bit scary at the bottom of the mountain. Let's just hide here. It'll be convenient to go back when we have enough time. We can also take less risks. What do you think?" Although Xiao Wanqing, Morong Xian, and Mei Yinheng didn't say anything, they all nodded in agreement with Yu Qianqiu. It was dark at the bottom of the mountain, but it was indeed a bit scary. When they looked back, they would know that there were many people from various sects who had the same idea. They all stopped and planned to stay here for a long time. Ko Shuehua said a little angrily, "Let's go. The demons and ghosts here are most fond of blood. We have figured out the rules of the trial held every 5 years by the 6 major sections. Moreover, there is no place to hide on the mountainside. It will be crowded with people. It will be hard to escape if there is an accident." Yu Qianqiu and the other 3 women looked at each other in dismay. They then looked at the other sects and saw that there were already people rushing down the mountain without stopping. They seemed to be older people, and it was likely that they were people with experience in trials. Seeing that the 4 people were still in a daze, Ko Shuehua stamped her feet and said, "If you don't go, I'll go first." She turned and walked down the mountain. To be honest, if Ferdinand hadn't repeatedly told her that it would be safer for her to get rid of Yu Qianqiu with her cultivation, it would be a burden to protect people with low cultivation like him. "Don't! Grandmaster, wait for us!" Yu Qianqiu shouted softly. The 4 people already believed her and hurriedly followed Ko Shuehua. After walking for a short while, although he had walked quite a distance, it was a pity that he was still a little too late. Suddenly, there were sounds similar to that of birds flying in the sky. There were also sounds similar to the squeaking of mice. Following that, the sounds increased in number and density until they could be heard everywhere. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the scattered trees that grew strangely in 2s and 3s. He didn't know where the sound came from. "It's the bloodthirsty demon hunters. Everyone keep quiet. Cover each other, and quickly go down the mountain," Ko Shuehua ordered. The 4 people hurriedly followed her words and moved quickly. The 4 women surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who had the weakest cultivation, and quickly walked down the mountain. In the distant sky, there was darkness at first, and then an overwhelming number of red dots covered the sky. They flew over the 5 people and rushed to the mountainside. Yu Qianqiu looked up and found that the red dots were actually the eyes of bats. A large group of black bats the size of wash basins were squeaking ferociously. It made people's hands and feet numb and scared. Fortunately, they ran fast. This time, those guys on the mountain who wanted to take advantage of the situation were doomed. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. It seemed that he had the same idea as them just now, but he had forgotten. Sure enough, there were screams everywhere on the mountainside. "Bats! Bats! Such big bats! Ah!" There were already people screaming. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked. In the distance there were sword rays everywhere. The people on the mountainside were already fighting with the bats. The shrill cries of the bats were mixed with the occasional screams of someone. It was a little hard to listen to. Some people actually wanted to escape on their swords, but as soon as they flew up, they were surrounded by the bats. They screamed and fell from the sky. Yu Qianqiu saw this and cursed in his heart. What idiots! With so many people protecting them, they might not be able to do anything to them. Trying to escape would make them die faster. The people on the mountainside had probably learned from those who wanted to escape. They started to fight calmly. Gradually there were no more screams. Dang! Yu Qianqiu was startled by the crisp sound beside him. Wouldn't it kill him to make a sound at this time? He turned around and saw that Mei Yinhong was observing the situation on the mountainside from time to time. She accidentally touched the rock beside her with her sword. The 5 people looked up at the sky at the same time. If they had waited for a while longer, all the bats would have reached the mountainside. But now there were only a few hundred bats in the sky. They were flapping their wings and floating in the air. He glared at the 5 of them with a ferocious expression with his bright red eyes. F***ck. What the hell is this unlucky girl doing? Sigh. Yu Qianqiu groaned in pain. Chapter 107. Squeak squeak. It was like the sound of an attack horn. The blood-sucking demon bats the size of washbasins scattered in the air. Along with the rapid cries, hundreds of demon bats condensed into a whirlwind and rushed down. Yu Qianqiu, who was a little worried at the beginning, completely calmed down in the face of the upcoming fierce battle. Under his calm appearance, a long-lost passion surged through his limbs. In his mind, a person holding 2 machetes appeared in a corner of the city, rushing towards a group of people. Wherever he went, blood would spurt out, accompanied by the cries of his opponents. The bloody wounds on his body would also increase. But at that time, there was only one thought: kill. A long-suppressed killing intent boiled in his chest, and a domineering aura instantly spread out. Yu Qianqiu looked at the hundreds of blood-sucking demon bats in the sky and trembled with excitement. The 4 women around him also noticed his abnormality. Even Ko Xuehua, who was at the nascent soul stage, felt a little uncomfortable from the special aura he emitted. You guys guard the surroundings, leave the rest to me. Yu Qianqiu's tone was unquestionable. Looking at the demon bats that swooped down with their fangs bared, he pointed 2 fingers at the sky and shouted, "Kill!" As soon as the sword in his hand flew out, 2 cold lights immediately rushed out from his storage bag. The 3 sword lights cooperated with each other and spun in a circle. They were as fast as lightning and rushed towards the demon bats. Squeak squeak. The group of demon bats that rushed down let out a series of sorrowful cries and were quickly dismembered into minced meat, accompanied by a rain of blood. The demon bats' whirlwind-like attack formation was immediately scattered. They flew into the air and flapped their wings. This attack caused nearly 100 demon bats to die. Women love to be clean, but at this critical moment they couldn't dodge. The 4 of them were immediately drenched in a rain of minced meat and blood. Other than Ko Xuehua, the 3 women all forgot about the danger they were in. They bitterly touched the minced meat on their heads, afraid that it would fall off their hands. Ko Xuehua looked at the 3 flying swords in the sky in surprise. They were actually controlling 3 swords at the same time. What a good coordination. Obviously, the power of each sword was not much, but when they worked together, they had such great lethality. Did Fuxian Island have such a sword technique? Why haven't I seen anyone use it before? The demon bats squeaked and swooped down again. This time, they had learned their lesson and rushed over in all directions. Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Come on!" His fingers formed a seal, and the 3 flying swords in the air moved as fast as lightning, like a jade maiden shuttling back and forth in all directions. It was obviously 3 flying swords, but when the 4 girls looked up, it was as if there were flying swords everywhere above their heads. Brilliant lights overflowed in all directions, appearing and disappearing one after another, extremely dazzling. One by one, the black shadows were pierced by the white light, smashing heavily onto the ground. Squeak squeak. Of the hundreds of demon bats, only a dozen or so were left in such a short period of time. They didn't dare to come anymore and fled in panic. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly, trying to run. His fingers moved, and a dozen or so cold lights flashed in the air. The dozen or so fleeing demon bats lost their momentum in the blink of an eye. They paused in the air for a moment, and then fell down stiffly. Yu Qianqiu stopped his hand seals. He clenched his fist and shouted, "Withdraw." The long sword returned to its scabbard, and the other 2 cold lights flashed into the storage bag. The girls looked at each other. They originally thought it would be troublesome. After all, there were more demon bats. Who knew that before they could even make a move, Yu Qianqiu, a Foundation Establishment stage disciple, would be able to single-handedly deal with them. Ko Shuahua frowned and thought for a while, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, I remember. I seem to have seen a spell that can control multiple swords at the same time in the scripture pavilion. I think it's called Guthuan sword spell. Are you practicing this sword spell? Yu Qianqiu himself was also very satisfied with the sword spell's debut. He nodded and smiled. Grandmaster Ko's eyes are really sharp, seeing through it at a glance. The other three girls looked at each other, and Xiao Wanqing sighed softly. What a beautiful sword spell. Mei Yinheng nodded repeatedly in agreement. Yes, yes. Foundation establishment stage cultivators can practice this kind of sword spell? Why didn't I know about it before? When I go back, I must find it to practice. In fact, all women like flashy but impractical things. But there was a condition, and that was, it must be beautiful. That's not right. Ko Shuahua shook her head and frowned. Guthuan sword spell, I have carefully studied it before. It is impossible for it to have such great power, especially with such an unbelievable speed. Not to mention your cultivation level is at the foundation establishment stage. The other three girls heard this and looked at him suspiciously. Yu Qianqiu smiled in disdain. Did you even need to say that? Big sister already said that this sword art's power was not enough. So I risked almost going berserk to improve it. I fused in two of the most powerful elements. 1. Unity is strength, and mutual cooperation is important. The other is what the martial arts novels in his previous life say. In the world of martial arts, only speed is unbeatable. But this is personal privacy, I can't tell you. Want to learn Guthuan sword spell? Go to the scripture pavilion and slowly learn it. Seeing that he smiled and didn't answer, Ko Shuahua also didn't want to waste time on this question. She said to the others, let's hurry down the mountain and find a place to hide. Otherwise it will be troublesome when it gets dark. They looked back at the battle between humans and bats on the mountainside, and didn't know when it would end. But they didn't care anymore. After all, their own lives were more important than others, so they hurriedly followed Ko Shuahua down the mountain. Generally speaking, Yan Shu was very lucky. Of the 15 disciples sent by his father from the Sundries Hall, 7 had participated in the Demon Ghost Realm's trial. When they reached the mountainside, the seniors decisively led him down the mountain. When he saw the sky full of demon bats flying to the mountainside, Yan Shu was secretly shocked. Although demon bats weren't powerful things, they couldn't withstand so many of them together. Along the way, in the gloomy atmosphere, various kinds of demon beasts appeared from time to attack, either alone or in groups. Yan Shu followed the seniors and the experts of other sects all the way to the foot of the mountain, leaving behind piles of demon beasts' corpses. Now he finally understood why his father didn't let him come here for the trial before. This time, he reported his name behind his father's back, which caused his father to be furious. He didn't deny that this impulse was all because of Yu Qianqiu. First, he wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu to vent his anger. Second, it was because Yu Qianqiu made him lose face several times in the alchemy pavilion, causing many disciples to treat him as a joke. He wanted to use this trial to regain some face. Now that the thought of revenge was gone, it didn't matter if he lost face or not. His only thought was to find a way to survive and return to supporting Immortal Island alive. He shouldn't have come. At that time, he was too impulsive. He didn't think about it. Since Yu Qianqiu was here, even if he didn't kill him, what chance did he have to go back? Even if he went back, he wouldn't have a chance to take revenge in the future. Not only was he depressed, but the seniors who were always protecting him were also depressed. It was good enough that he could ensure his own survival in the demon ghost domain. Now he had to spend effort to protect others. It was really a headache. But he was Elder Yan's precious son. Before coming here, Elder Yan had repeatedly reminded them. The meaning of his words was nothing more than hinting to them that they could get into trouble. But nothing could happen to his son. Otherwise, he wouldn't forgive them when he came back. The sky was getting dark, and it was also the time when the biggest crisis was coming. Once they reached the foot of the mountain, the people from the various sects found the people who were most beneficial to them, and formed small teams. There were even many people who abandoned their own sects and formed teams with experts from other sections. They looked for places to hide in order to survive the terrifying night in the demon ghost domain. On the mountain peak, the various sects carried the divine sense compass to check the situation of their disciples. Dongfang Chang'ao and the elders of supporting Immortal Island stared at the compass with a heavy expression. More than 10 light spots on the compass had disappeared. This meant that more than 10 disciples from supporting Immortal Island had died. There were also a few light spots that were very dim. Needless to say, they were definitely seriously injured. They looked at the sky and saw that it wasn't dark yet. Elder Quan and Elder Sun, who were staring at the compass, heaved a sigh of relief. The light spot that represented Yu Qianqiu was still very bright. This meant that this kid was still alive and well. He was able to survive the first wave of demonic beasts. Obviously, this kid wasn't as useless as Senior Brother Guan said. The two elders looked at each other at the same time. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.